Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is the East Bay Regional Park District's special meeting of the Board of Directors. And today is Friday, March 26, 2021, and it is 1:44. I apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties. But pursuant to Governor Newsom's executive order number N2920 and the Alameda County Health Officer's current shelter-in-place order effective May 18th, 2020, the East Bay Regional Park District headquarters will not be open to the public, and the Board of Directors and staff will be participating in the meetings via video conferencing. And Madam Clerk, could you tell the public, please, how they can listen in and participate?
Yes, President Rosario. Members of the public can listen in live via the Zoom link, which was posted on the agenda last week. They can send an email to the recording secretary. In this instance, it's Connie Swisher at cswisher@ebparks.org, or they can send, or they can call in and leave a voicemail with their message, and the recording secretary, Ms. Swisher, will transcribe it and give it to the board.
Great. And I believe, so with that, let's, Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll call?
Yes, President Rosario. Director Waspy.
Here.
Director Corbett.
Here.
Director Coffey.
Here.
Director Eccles.
She's on mute.
I know, I see her. She's on.
Here. You know, it's been telling me all I have to do is press the tab button, but it does, I mean, the
Space bar.
it doesn't work. It didn't work. So anyway, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Okay, Director Lane.
Here.
Director Wieskamp.
Here.
President Rosario.
Here.
General Manager Landreth.
Here.
Deputy General Manager Alvarez.
Here.
And then I'm just going to announce the Assistant General Managers, Jim O'Connor, I see, District Counsel Carol Victor, Assistant General Manager Johnson, Assistant General Manager Ocker, Assistant General Manager Christine Kelchner, and then Government Affairs Representative Eric Fueller. And I believe I've captured all of the Assistant General Managers. If not, I apologize. And that's it.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Are there any public comments? Not.
Our public comments in the board workshop are at the very end, and we do
Okay.
have two. So that'll be at the
Great.
end.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we are ready to begin.
Actually, Director Rosario just got an email. We have 3 public comments now.
Okay, and we will handle those at the end of the.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so General Manager Sabrina Landreth, you're on. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, President Rosario, and directors. I will be very brief in the interest of time here, because I know we have a lot to cover. As you've looked at your agenda, you've got some pretty hefty items. I don't think we're going to solve them all this afternoon. I just want to go ahead and at the front end of this to really thank the staff for pulling this together. They have done a fabulous job of compiling all of your varied interests and priorities and putting them into, I think, really a digestible list for you all to discuss today. And I want to thank the board in advance for helping us to prioritize our work. I have been here for a grand total of not even 8 full days, and I think I speak for all of the staff, and any help that you can provide with just the very large scope of work and projects that they have on their plate to let them know and what your priorities are for the next year is very, very welcome. I have been just amazed by how much everyone is doing here. So certainly prioritization is key. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and just kick it off to our Deputy General Manager and AGM Ocker to get us started.
Thank you so much, General Manager Landreth. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started. Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez. And let's see. So we are, with those welcoming remarks from our general manager, we're launching board workshop number 2, where we get to try to focus more your priorities and listen to some key topics that came about from the last board workshop. This is where we are in terms of the body of work that history has guided the board of directors pathway in communicating your interests. There's a total of 5 workshops. At every workshop, you have an opportunity to continue refining those priorities, which we will certainly appreciate you doing that. And I know it's very difficult, but it's a very large body of work, as Sabrina correctly has indicated. Just a quick reminder in terms of the process. The board, we will try to finalize the process in terms of prioritizing. There were 101 individual board interest items that came from the last board workshop. And so thank you for taking the time to give us your top 3 priorities from these 101. But so that we're clear, we do hear from you in multiple occasions throughout the entire board workshop series. And then as we understand what those interests may be, and as we refine some of the general interest and priorities, then we will be fitting that into the processes to develop our budget, and also certainly the planning process for the Parks District's performance plan. And this is where we get to track and measure and have a system of accountability so that we can report out correctly and transparently to the public as to how all of these large pieces come together. We do have a very large agenda. There's a lot to do today. So I want to make sure that we keep true to our agenda. Deborah has graciously agreed to shepherd the prioritization process for today. And yes, we get to squeeze you even more to see if there is consensus on what may be prioritized from a listing of your top 3. I know that we heard from some of you saying over email to Deborah, this is really hard. It is very hard, but it's important that we focus on what we can deliver to the public and to you in the near term, the short term, and certainly the long term. We do have a break that's put in here, but before we go into that break, we would like to conduct the first 2 focus topics. And then right after that, coming back from the break, we will engage in the last 2 focus topics. And certainly we want to make space to hear from Board President Rosario and General Manager Landreth to see if there's an additional closing comments to encapsulate the things that perhaps resonated the most in our deliberations with you today. Again, as a reminder, there's no formal actions that may come out of this board workshop, but we certainly want to engage in a conversation so that we can have a better understanding of where all of this is coming. So with that very brief introduction, I would like to turn it over to Deborah so we can get started.
Thank you, Anna, for that great introduction. And, you know, in a normal year, we would be in person. And so we're going to try to have a little fun with our prioritization exercise today by trying out a Google poll. So just to repeat a little bit of what Anna said about the process we've gone through. At our first board workshop, board members shared their interests. We captured them in what we call wall notes. And those wall notes are summarized into a way that we're trying to capture where is the best place to continue those conversations. And that's attached in the packet and available to the public. We also asked each board member to take their own interests and give us their top 3. And so we did that over the last few days. Board members submitted to me their top 3 out of the items that they had shared with the group. And then we put that together in a list, and it could have been a maximum of 21 items, but it ended up being 17 items because there was some board members that had the same items in their top 3, such as district-wide funding was something that many board members had in their top 3, equity and mission delivery also. And so we ended up with a list of 17. And I'll put that up on the screen in a few minutes. But what we're going to do first is we're going to do a practice poll and just let you do something for fun and to make sure you understand how this poll will work before we do the real poll for the 17 items. For the 17 items, I've emailed you the list, so you have that. And we're going to ask you to select 5 out of that list for the poll once we get to the real poll. But we have some of our finance team here, Caitlin Stone and Deborah Spalding, helped to put together a practice poll for you so that you could get the feel of how this will work. And so Caitlin is going to bring up our first test poll, and we're going to ask you to share with us your favorite kind of ice cream flavor. So Caitlin, if you could pull up that ice cream poll, and this is just a practice to make sure it works for everyone. And the way Google works, it's not completely perfect, but you're going to choose 3 of your favorite ice cream flavors. Now, it's possible that you don't like strawberry, chocolate, or vanilla, so you can click the not in this section item. And Caitlin, is that working where they can click on it?
It should be, yes.
Doesn't
I
work
clicked
for
on chocolate. Come on.
Is that working for you?
It works
Or
for
you-
me.
Great.
There's the chocolate ice cream.
And so if each board member would select 3 of their favorite and then clicked end polling or submit. I'm not sure what you see on your screen.
Okay.
That's giving a little bit of what was selected there.
3 choices or 1?
3 choices for this practice poll.
And that's for, we have a choice of 2 sections, right?
Correct. And you can choose your 3 from either of the 2 sections. That's kind of how the real poll is going to look. It's going to be broken into 3 questions.
Hey, I
Okay.
was easy.
So if everyone's put their vote in, then Caitlin, you can bring down the poll.
See if we have a consensus.
And Caitlin, I can see the results on there. I'm not sure if that's what you had meant to show, but looks like the poll is closing.
I believe that's
And you can
because-
click it and close it at the top if you'd like.
Happy to.
So we are asking that only board members participate in the real poll. But is what we're going to do now is we have access to all of the answers and who submitted them. And then we're going to put them into another type of format to show the results. The Google results doesn't really give us exactly what we want. So we're going to ask staff to put that into the results. But as we go ahead and do that right now, I will ask if anyone had any major questions or if that seemed easy. We're going to do one more practice before we do the live.
Oh, you were a little fast for me, so I didn't get to submit in the second one,
Oh,
but I'll go
goodness.
faster.
We will double check and make sure everyone is finished before we finish the next one. So Caitlin, would you like to pull up the second poll in which, just for fun, nobody's keeping track. There's no wrong answer. We're asking where you'd like to visit. So we put a lot of different locations around the world. Choose 3, and you might have to scroll down to see the rest. You see the scroll bar there in the gray. Scroll all the way down. There's numbers 1 through 8, and you can select any of the 3. Again, if there's some in one category that you don't like, you may have to click not in this section in order to log your answer and to click submit. I know we haven't had a chance to think about traveling lately, so. So this is our second practice poll that we're just doing to make sure that everything works correctly.
I have an objection.
Do I not have your favorite place on there, Director Cobb?
No, you don't have a write-in. We can't
Oh,
just
you're
write
right.
it.
I do not have
You
a.
had to make decisions.
is correct.
Come on. Be tough.
So let's see, does anybody need a little more time?
Nope.
Okay, we can go ahead and close that poll. And I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. Deborah Spalding was going to log the ice cream flavors. I don't know if she's had enough time to share her screen and just give you a sense of what the final results might look at. Deb, did you get a chance to log those?
I have not yet completed the results. I'm working on it. I'll have it ready.
Wow.
Okay, very good. Well, I will, while Deb is doing that, just for the public, and I'll bring this up again in a little bit, but the top 3 priorities from each board member's interests are listed, and they are here from number 1 to 17 in alphabetical order. And is what, when we do the real poll, we're going to have these 17 are going to be broken down into 3 separate questions. That's why we did the practice, to give you a chance to see if that would work. And so we would like you to, on the real poll, select 5 from the list and then click submit once you are done. And then we will be able to log those points. Okay, is that fun so far? Does anybody have any questions about how that worked? Yes, Dr. Corr.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So my question is, and looking at this really great list, there's a few things on here that are things that I would say that we'd be required to do no matter what the priority was. I'll give you an example. The master plan update, right? That's something that will have to be done at some point. So I'm just wondering, how do we really assess that? Because we're going to have to do it anyway. Should it be on this list, competing with other things where we really want to set a priority one way or the other, whether we're going to be able to do it or not?
I think in general, staff uses this input from the board to help us develop our work plans. And
Okay.
so we do know that this is important. And sometimes it's a matter of when do we get started? When do we push the gas? How much? Because we all know that all of our projects take usually more than a year. We have big long-term projects going on. So it gives staff a sense of what's important to work on today and to set for our priorities for the 2022 budget. And then other things maybe don't have that urgency.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Can I?
want to share the results yet, or should we do the real poll first?
Can I just make a comment as well?
Of course.
So I agree with Ellen, but I guess to put a finer point on it, there's some extremely important priorities that are not on this list because they weren't project oriented. Like, for example, our commitment to preventing and mitigating fire risk. And I know that we're going to have a presentation on that shortly, but I just wanted to, just for the audience, I just wanted to be clear that that is still certainly one of my highest priorities, and it's not on this list because we're mostly focused on immediate project as opposed to our ongoing work that's already happening and that will continue to be enhanced and increased.
Thank you, Director Eccles, for that. That is very important. There are board initiatives that the staff is always working on and always prioritizing, and you are correct. Some of those do not show up on this list.
Can I just add something to that too? I so appreciate Director Eccles bringing that up, because I know last year there was an issue about whether we support stewardship or not because it wasn't on the list. You know, obviously stewardship is something that we do every day and it's part of our entire mission. So I think that's a really good point. The fact that it's not on the list doesn't mean it's not a priority. It's something that we work on an ongoing basis. So I'm glad you brought that up, Elizabeth.
Director Wieskamp has a question. Director Wieskamp.
I guess I chose to be pragmatic and not say Dumbarton Quarry Camper. I assumed a lot of things were going to happen. I just looked at the long run, and I remember recently we heard how much money we're going to need to hire enough employees at the right price and get parklands open and buy open space and take care of it all. So for me, money from any probably number of ways, to me, is the most important criteria for the future when I'm not going to be here. But if we don't have money to do all of these things and plan on how we're maybe going to achieve half of it, I'd be real pleased with that. And I believe, honestly, looking at what's happening with like the Aramis solar plan, taking hundreds of acres of ag land, that if you don't protect open space that's available and make it permanent, it isn't. And so I went for Tesla and N3 Ranch combined because I consider that one of the most important things we can achieve. And the way we covered a lot of other things is by updating the master plan. That involves people from throughout all of our areas getting involved. Maybe we don't hear what we want to hear, but we'll hear from everybody. And so maybe I'm just satisfied. I mean, come on. Del Valle is about to open their rejuvenated visitor center. I know that Jim is going to say Dumbarton Quarry is going to open. It still keeps sliding, but it's going to be this year. And I think we've made great progress on fire protection. There's so many issues out there. So I chose to group them, but I appreciate all the ones that everybody's picked out because as a Dumbarton Quarry junkie, you've got to keep repeating it over and over again. That's it.
Thank you. Director Coffey.
I have a question. I think it's for Director Eccles, but I just want to echo what others have been saying. I didn't put Deer Valley or Clayton Valley on my list this year, and I always have in the past, simply because I'm satisfied they're both in progress. Yeah. And I just thought I'd concentrate on projects that maybe need a nudge or need to get on people's radar. And similarly, I don't, in my mind, I don't come up with working on the board operating guidelines or DEI efforts because those are our own. Those aren't operational projects. Those are things we're doing on our own as a board. Anyway, my question was, I'm not understanding what the reference to Albany Beach is and safety with multiple uses. What the goal of that project is.
Oh, you're on mute, Director Eccles.
Okay. Deborah, do you want me to cover this now? Okay.
Before the vote, sure.
We're being asked to vote.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize the vote was next. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So the main issue here is that, as you all know, after the beach improvement and the new trail that was put in, and of course, in addition to COVID, Albany Beach has gotten incredibly popular. And it's popular with many different user groups. And so the most fundamental issue with safety is the fact that our kiters use that area. So the kites that they use on the bay are very large, and there really isn't sort of a clear path to use from the place where they're supposed to put the kites together down to the water. And so when the beach is crowded, it can be, frankly, a little bit dangerous. So really the goal, at least my goal, is to work with that user group and other user groups to try to see if there's some potential design changes that we could make to make that beach area more safely. There's also issues with folks, as you know, for a long time, who people like to bring their dogs to Albany Beach. Not everybody likes to have their dogs at Albany Beach, and I know that the city of Albany and the Park District has been talking about, are there ways to address it for families who might want to come to the beach with young kids or kids who are scared of dogs or whatever at times, and how to work that situation out as well. And that's I mean, I wouldn't really characterize that as a safety issue, but it is just really looking again at Albany Beach and figuring out how we can make these various multiple uses at Albany Beach all work for everyone.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, and we can show you what the results will look like using the ice cream flavors as an example. Deb, are you able to bring that up? So this is kind of how we were planning on tallying. So we'll have the 17 items going down on the first column and then the directors across, and we'll be able to add up the votes. So here it looks like Chocolate and Rocky Road are the favorites.
And mine didn't come in. Oh, well, say la vie.
Okay, well, we will make sure that everyone's vote gets taken. So if you are all ready, I will share my screen once more with the big list for the public. Let's see if that's the right one. And then I will ask Caitlin to bring up the real poll of the 17 items, and we'll make sure that board members have plenty of time to log their votes. As a backup, if for some reason it doesn't look like it's working well for you, we're happy to have you call out the numbers that you've selected, and we will make sure your votes get tallied. So looks like the poll is up there. Again, you'll have 3 what we're calling multiple choice questions, but this is just where you select 5 out of the total 17 that are listed there. And so go ahead and take your time to make sure you get that right. We, of course, are going to allow you to see the results and make sure that everything got logged the way that you had planned.
Pardon me, AGM Anker, could you make that larger?
There we go.
I think
There we go.
is that good? I just have to scroll
Yeah,
back.
you have to scroll it on the very bottom, I think. It's a lot better.
If I make it larger, then I just have to go back and forth.
Oh, that's okay.
All
Thank you.
17 items. Very good. So maybe if
Deborah,
oh yes, Director Eccles.
so it seems like it's only letting me do 1 per section. Is that the intention? Because there's only 3 sections, so that means we only get 3 votes.
I believe we've set it up so that you should be able to vote multiply in each section. Is any other director having a problem with that?
I don't have the vote at all on it.
Yeah.
Is the vote supposed to be up right now? Because I don't have it at all.
All right, let's see. Caitlin, can you help me out and see if we have the poll up?
Of course, AGM Anker. So you may have your Zoom screen oriented, so you might not be able to see the poll. It does look like it is up on my end, so I am optimistic that we can get this showing for everyone else. And it does say that 0 people have voted out of our total number of directors, so I can tell you that not everyone has had a chance to submit their votes yet. And speaking to Director Eccles' comment, you should be able to choose up to 5 total among the 17, and you should be able to choose at least 1 item per the 3 questions. And like AGM Anker did say, if you're having trouble and you'd like to enter it in the chat or even just speak out, we're happy to vote on your behalf. So this isn't, this is supposed to be a fun thing. So we want to make it entertaining for you guys.
When I try to vote for more than 1, it erases the first one is what happens. So it is.
I agree.
So this is Beverly. I did 5 and I did submit. Did you receive it?
So it looks like we do have 1 submitted. We also have a backup poll that AGM Anker arranged. So we can always try launching that one and see if we have better luck. Or, if this is going to not work out the way we wanted to, we could always do it the old fashioned way. So we're happy to work with whatever works for you guys.
I have a question.
So
This is
that's interesting.
Beverly. Did you receive mine?
Yes, Director Lane.
Okay, good.
Could
So
somebody tell me what the Whitney Dotson Fund includes?
Yes, I can speak to that. So that after Director Dotson passed away, his family wanted to set up a fund that would help to provide resources to continue to bring underserved youth into the parks and for camping and for other recreational activities, to carry on some of the work that he had been doing. And so that is, I feel very strongly about giving life to that fund and getting it off the ground and getting it going. That's something that.
Okay, that's fine.
Enough.
Thank
Okay.
you. So I count my votes. I wouldn't want to take too many.
So I am getting some input that maybe question number 3 isn't allowing for more than one vote, but question 1 and 2 were. So
AGM Ocker, would you like us to relaunch the poll as we had discussed as our backup plan?
I think it seems like other board members aren't able to log their 5 items. Does that sound correct? Well,
Yes.
my experience in the 3rd page, there's no voting dot at all. There's no way to vote it. There's no dot. You know what I mean? See, we did a practice and everything. So I apologize for that. What we're going to do is we're going to take down this poll. And I'm going to ask Caitlin to go ahead and make sure we have a backup poll, and we're going to make sure that it allows for multiple choice on all 3 answers. And she's going to go ahead and relaunch the poll, and we're going to give it one more try. And if for some reason this isn't working, then I'm going to have us move on to the next item, and we're going to come up with a backup. But we did practice this several times. So. And can we make sure there's enough time for people to scroll all the way through to the 3 sections so that those on the last section don't get short shrift? Yes, yes. And that was the goal with having all the items submitted to the board members yesterday. So you had a chance to look at the list and really think about what are your top 5. Okay. So does that sound like that'll work? If you can relaunch it, making sure that multiple choice is an option for all 3 questions, and we'll give it one more quick try and see if this fun exercise is fun.
One never knows.
Ice cream was fun.
If you had delivered it, it would have been even better.
All right, so I think the poll is up again.
But why is part of it underlined?
This looks like the poll results.
Yeah, this is the poll results.
So
Which
thank you.
wasn't the way I voted. I know.
Or at least it was Beverly's results.
Yeah, that's correct. That was the our poll we just completed. So we're going to relaunch it. And I just confirmed within Zoom that all of the options are multiple choice. So I'm really hoping that this one works. I do apologize. We practiced so many times. So I appreciate your patience.
Okay, looks blank.
Version 2.
So this looks like the restart. So
Okay.
Dr. Lane, you'll have to relog your items, and hopefully Director Corbett, you can see it on your device, I hope. I see it so far. I'm not sure about the 3rd page. That was going to be a problem. If we can scroll down and make sure you can see all 17 items. Uh-oh. That working better for you, Director Eccles?
Yes, thank you. It's great.
Oh, good. Okay, it looks like 2 people have clicked submit already. No pressure. Maybe that means it's working this time.
Did you get 5 from me or 4?
Director, we can confirm as soon as we download the results, but we will, of course, double check that we got all of your 5 votes.
Okay, because I went up and reviewed and one was blank, so.
We will make sure your votes get counted, I promise.
I know you will.
I changed my vote in the second poll.
It was a conspiracy, Betsy.
Okay. So, I mean, this is Beverly. I could submit it again if you only got
You're
4.
trying to fix the vote. I know what you're trying to do.
Actually, I don't know if it will allow you from the same device, but you could,
But try, Beverly.
Okay, well, I know which one didn't, was blank when I rechecked, so I can tell you. All right.
Honestly, if you make a mistake, all of the list is fine. Look at it that way.
all right. Looks like we're looking for one last submit click.
I was thinking Director Corbett might have had trouble because she's on an iPad.
It's a different view that we weren't able to practice. That's true.
Yeah.
No, mine's all done.
Yeah. Okay.
I was one of the first people to vote. Very good. So I think, Caitlin, can you confirm there's only 6 logged right now?
Correct. It does take just a couple of seconds to fully realize that the 7th person has voted. I noticed that initially, but I can confirm that 6 have completed their votes.
Okay. Well, if all directors feel that they have successfully clicked submit, then I thank you very much for going through this with us. I think I will stop sharing my screen now. And I think as a matter of time, just to do a time check, it may be a great idea for us to tally the results of this poll. And if for some reason we are missing one of the 5 from one of the directors, maybe at the break, we can check in with you. And then we will reveal the results closer to the end of the meeting, if that's okay with the board president. That be fine?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, well, I don't want it to be anticlimactic, but it will take minutes to gather all of that data. And normally if we were in person, we would have the wall notes all up on the walls everywhere where everyone would be able to go through and look at them. You do have them in the packet. They're posted on our website. And so is what I ask of all the board members is if there's anything in those wall notes that I didn't capture quite right, please let us know and we can make adjustments to that for the final document. I did have one edit that was made to the final document for Director Eccles to clarify the Point Bellotti trail between the Chevron and the Terminal 4 properties. So that was corrected on the top on the top 17 items. So if Caitlin and Deb Spalding and Catherine Dudney that have helped me through this process have everything they need, then I think we can end this agenda item for now and we will come back after the break. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Director Rosario.
Thank you. Technology is always a challenge, but it can be fun too. And I appreciate the fun part. So I think we're ready for an update on the wildfire vegetation fuels management. And then
Yes, Director Rosario. So we do have Fire Chief Aline Tiley and Government Affairs Chief Eric Fuller, who will be leading today's focus conversation. There's our Fire Chief Aline.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone. And the first couple of slides is a joint PowerPoint. So the first couple of slides I'd like to bring up if I can. See, share screen.
Tyler, will you introduce, Chief Tyler, will you introduce yourself and the team for us?
I'm having a bit of difficulty trying to share my screen.
You should be able to show your, there you go, it's coming.
Is it coming? Okay.
Uh-oh.
I don't see anything.
I do. I just see something that says PowerPoint. So
Okay, well, that didn't work.
No.
Try one then.
There's something in the air today.
Not Friday the 13th.
I actually feel it might be operator error on my part.
No, now.
Can you see it?
I see you.
Hmm.
Mm.
Okay. Maybe I could get some help from Connie.
Yeah, Chief Tiley, did you submit that PowerPoint to one of us, to one of the staff members? There you go. You're trying it again.
I submitted it to Connie, so I'm hoping that Connie can bring it up for me. And so the first couple of slides are going to be, we're going to have Jeff Rasmussen come up and just kind of give a brief background of the Wildfire Hazard Reduction and Resource Management Plan and the grant from the beginning. So kind of how we went through the process and then the grant monies and where we are now.
Yes, I'm reaching out to her. Oh, there she is.
Perfect.
Connie.
Wait, are we finding it? Does anyone else have a PowerPoint?
Not sure. Yolanda, were you able?
Yeah, I'm talking to her now. She wasn't. She was doing the polling, so she's getting ready to do this right now. Sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate the help. So this is going to be, to give them a little bit of time, this is going to be 3 people helping out here. It's going to be Jeff Rasmussen. I'm going to give the board then kind of a real quick update on the tree mortality portion of it. And then Eric Fueller is going to come in and kind of talk about the conduit to the state and the efforts that have been made there.
Okay, here we are.
Perfect.
Okay, Eileen, she's gonna have to monitor it, I guess. So just talk to her when you need to change. You can hear you.
Perfect. Then if you could just do the next slide and Jeff Rasmussen can step up and the first 2 slides are his.
I don't see Jeff. Oh, there he is. Jeff?
Hi, Jeff. Are you ready to go ahead and start the presentation? I need you to come off mute. There you go.
If anyone can hear me, I seem to have lost my internet connection. And a great part for the correspondence, been working all day, every day.
How are we doing today?
Can't see the PowerPoint or hear the video.
All right. Connie, can you move to slide 2?
Oh,
I am back.
All right, Jeff, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I still can't see the screen, but I'll start on the slides. Good afternoon, I'm Jeff Rasmussen, Assistant Finance Officer, and hopefully on the screen is a history of our fuels management. Oh, there you go, of our fuels management efforts. For me, this process really began in 2004, the passage of Measure CC. And I'm sorry, as I begin, I have 2 introductory comments. One, that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes a long time, a lot of coordination to get this work done. And also one of the successes of our vegetation management plan is its flexibility. So as I said before, this began in 2004, the passage of Measure CC. And then soon after that, we began applying for a number of grants from FEMA and other sources, also partnering with UC Berkeley and Oakland on a number of FEMA grants as well. In 2010, the district completed its vegetation management plan and approved the CEQA document for that plan. And then also in 2010, FEMA began its NEPA process to to evaluate and approve those grants. In 2011, the district settled with the Hills Conservation Network on a lawsuit over our CEQA document. And that's just one of the first examples of how the flexibility of our plan allowed us to settle with Hills Conservation Network while still meeting our vegetation resource management goals. In 2013, NEPA issued a draft NEPA document over 3,200 pages. And this was after some public meetings and quite a lot of controversy. But with that, FEMA was able to approve their NEPA document in 2015, along with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issuing a biological opinion for our plan. Once that was approved, it was immediately we were immediately put into a lawsuit over this with a number of parties suing FEMA, UC Berkeley, Oakland, as well as the Park District. Through that process, FEMA ultimately ended up withdrawing funds from UC Berkeley and Oakland, specifically because their plans were not flexible. They could not meet the resource and management goals of the community and what was necessary. So ultimately on that first lawsuit, the Park District and FEMA were able to prevail, and the Ninth Circuit Court won our lawsuit in 2018. Also in 2018, CDFW, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, issued an incidental take permit for our vegetation management plan. Actually, as a result of the funds being withdrawn from UC Berkeley sued FEMA and the Park District, but that suit was actually dismissed just recently in 2021 in the Ninth Circuit. So now, hopefully, after all these years, the trail of lawsuits has ended. And then finally planned for completion in 2021, set aside 645 acres of conservation to preserve the whipsnake, and that will happen in Tilden and Sunol. I do have one more slide, but before I go any further, maybe District Council Carol Victor would like to weigh in on some of this long history we've been through.
I'm sorry. Yes, Carol Victor, District Council. No, I think this is an excellent history. I do have to say we are one of the only agencies. I think we are the only agency with approved fuels management plan to do work in the urban wildland interface. And you can see what a formidable challenge it is and how long it's taken. So our plan was adopted in 2010, and the last litigation involving our plan or the funding for the plan ended in 2021.
Great, thank you, Carol. So for the I can't see, but go to the next slide if you would, please. And this is on our funding history. So in 2020, we spent $2.3 million on vegetation management, and over the last 10 years, we spent $20 million on vegetation management. And then this rather large table shown on the screen right now, this is shows the variety of funding sources where we get money for vegetation management in the Park District. I'll just point out a couple. First, FEMA has provided over $8 million of funding. That's in the center of the table. Then lower on the bottom is Measure CC, which has provided over $8.6 million of funding. And then finally, near the bottom is the general fund. The district and the board has made a strong commitment to not only every acre do we treat, we have to continue to maintain it. So the general fund has provided over $8 million to vegetation management for a total of $28 million, over the last 10 years or so. And then, so $28 million has been budgeted, and to date, there 7.6 remains available for continued and future vegetation management work. So that's the end of my comments, and I'll turn it back to Eileen.
Thanks, Jeff. Next slide, please, Connie. And I really appreciate your assistance here. This really has taken a village with regards to Jeff and legal and operations and stewardship and fire department and a lot of other folks too. So what I'm here to talk to you today is about kind of an incident within the larger plan. And that is the vegetation management portion that Jeff just spoke about, and then the tree mortality. So here on this map, you can see with these little red dots, the places that we have actually noticed this tree mortality across the Park District. Though you can see a map here of just the Park District, one of the biggest takeaways I'd like you guys to come away with is understanding that this is really bigger than the district. It's a regional or even a state issue. There are lots of thoughts on the causes, but kind of the best minds now, including UC Davis, UC Berkeley, and CAL FIRE's entomology and foresters believe that it is primarily drought stress that has come in, which is something that's happened, over a long period of time, many times. And then because we have native pathogens or pests or other stressors that live on a regular basis within this balance, they now have the upper hand, because if a tree gets stressed by drought, of course, other things can come in and make the situation worse for them. So we know drought stress as a result of climate change, but we're also figuring out that there may be some other things involved. So this has really been occurring since October of last year. The East Bay Regional Park District, primarily stewardship and fire, realized there was a sudden onset of tree mortality and dieback, and it's been primarily affecting acacia, eucalyptus, bay, pine, and some other vegetation. So this led to an increase in dead, standing, and highly dangerous tree species in an urban interface of the East Bay Hills, which is right smack dab in the middle of our park district. The most significant areas of impact are Anthony Chabot in Castro Valley, Reinhardt Redwood Regional Park, which is Oakland and Berkeley, and Tilden Regional Park, Oakland and Berkeley. Many of the areas that are impacted are in old eucalyptus plantations with a higher tree per acre for fuel loading, which means that because they were planted in a plantation style, they're very close together. Like I said, the cause of the mortality and the dieback is not fully understood or known, but it is likely to be a direct correlation to drought caused by climate change. So currently, the fire department and stewardship departments are partnering with the United States Forest Service, UC Berkeley, and CAL FIRE Resource Management in Sacramento to study the causes. Next slide, please. So I wanted to put up this slide just so that you understand the impacts. Here are 9 parks that I've mentioned: Anthony Chabot, Carquinez Regional Shoreline, Guerin Regional Park, Los Trompos, Miller Knox, Point Pinole, Reinhardt Redwood Regional, Sibley, and Tilden, totaling 1,001 acres of parkland. Next slide, please. So the most important thing here is that though we've tracked approximately 1,000 acres of trees in the die-offs in our park alone, again, it is a regional matter. And all of the listed acres that are in our park district are in the state responsibility areas. So we are really looking to CAL FIRE to take a lead in this. Here's a picture. It's very difficult to show on a PowerPoint presentation, but if you look closely, you can see that it looks like somebody's taken kind of a dull brown paintbrush and run it across the forests here. This is showing partially our land and then along some with East Bay mud. And we are working with East Bay mud and others who are experiencing the same thing to network and to try to better understand what's happening and what we're going to do about it. But here's what we know. It is a dynamic and evolving situation with more to learn. That's obvious. Regional distribution throughout Contra Costa and Alameda counties, and likely involving the remaining Bay Area counties. It's affecting the plants that I spoke of before, which is the black acacia, eucalyptus, Monterey pine, bay laurel, and other brush species. And many areas already identified as needing treatment within the Wildfire Hazard Reduction and Resource Management Plan are included. Next slide, please. So what we've done since October, and here is a very good picture showing you how dire the situation is. And so it is my opinion that no action is not an option for us here. This is a tinderbox. What we've done, we have to this point in time, we have flown with the help of Eagle, mapped the extent and shared it with others, and performed ground reconnaissance to make sure what we were seeing from the air is also what was happening on the ground. We formed an East Bay Regional Park District multi-divisional tree mortality task force internally that involves the Interdisciplinary Fuels Group, which is the Stewardship Department, Operations, and the Fire Department. We've joined in regional coordination with the federal, state, and local government. And we've continued our work in the initial treatment and maintenance throughout the district that has to do with wildfire hazard reduction and resource management plan. The other important thing that we've done is engaged our government affairs department, which has been an incredibly important conduit to the state. Next slide, please. And here's a picture of the Tilden area. What I was showing you prior to that was primarily East Bay Mud and Redwood Park. Next slide. Thank you. What we need to do, and what I'm asking you to consider, is that in the short term, we really need board support for funding requests. One of the things that we're going to do is increase our on-call contracting, and we're going to request that the board approve. And I know we can't do that right now, but just to get you to kind of maybe wrap your brains around it. Right now, we ask for $1 million a year in on-call contracting, and we'd like to increase that at some point to $4 million. We're also looking for other funding for implementation of the work. Increased staffing to manage short and long-term workload is going to be necessary because the fire department is already working at capacity with trying to implement the plan and all the work that we have already committed to doing. And then we really need to seek state and federal funding. And at this point, what I'd like to do is hand it over to Eric in Government Affairs so he can explain to you the conduit that they've created to us, from us to the state. Eric?
Thank you, Chief Tiley. Eric Feeler, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Park District. We had our initial meeting with Chief Tom Porter of CAL FIRE on February 9th. It was very clear in that conversation that he was not aware of this mortality issue. Subsequently, we have had several meetings with additional CAL FIRE personnel and also with the Deputy Secretary of Resources, Jessica Morris, and Chief Eng from CAL FIRE. In that meeting, one of the participants said, "This is a wildfire," actually I can quote it, "wildfire disaster waiting to happen." So with a sense of urgency, I know Jeff started the presentation saying this is a marathon and not a sprint. And in fact, it's even more of a marathon than we talked about with the funding, because 2004 was Measure CC, but the fire was 1991. So it took a long time just to get the resources to develop the plan and then to implement it. But our urgency today is to really engage CAL FIRE and to engage our state delegation and potentially our federal delegation in really pointing out the enormity of this situation. I don't believe Eileen mentioned it, and if she did, please forgive me, but the Anthony Chabot alone is a $30 to $40 million eradication effort. We estimate much more than that to do just what's on our land. And this is occurring on East Bay Mudland, on other properties in the East Bay. And we believe it to be occurring in other parts of the region. And even if it's not occurring in this kind of explosive way, other agencies such as Mid-Peninsula, Marin, Santa Clara are all very worried about the spread. So it's a regional issue, regardless of whether it's happening at the same level in other parts of the region. So that is why we've engaged with CAL FIRE so aggressively. We've also been meeting, the legislature has announced early budget action on wildfire. So we have been meeting with members of our delegation, specifically Budget Chair Nancy Skinner's office, about trying to include some language in whatever wildfire package they move through that addresses this particular mortality issue. There was in 2018 a statewide mortality task force. We're talking to our delegation about perhaps re-engaging that task force, because this could be wider spread than just our region. And then we've also met with Senator Bob Wieckowski's staff on budget, as his budget subcommittee also has oversight over resources. And just yesterday, meeting with Assembly Member Bill Quirk, he actually asked us to provide him a budget request letter, and we are in the process of writing that. The last piece of real government relations to mention, I think, is that on the federal side, we have spoken with our advocate, Peter Umhofer, about this particular issue, and he actually does think that there is going to be national legislation, not necessarily about just tree mortality, but on wildfire throughout the West. So we'll be looking for opportunities to engage in those discussions, particularly as we do our legislative visits April 14th and 15th virtually. And this will be on one of our top issues to discuss. So I think that's where we are today, but literally just today I met with Senator Wachowski's staff again. So there's active movement on the state legislative level, and we're going to keep on it.
Thank you, Eric. And if you could do the next slide, please, Connie. This kind of gives kind of a roundup of what Eric was just talking about. It's also important to note that I'm in close communication with some of the other agencies that are experiencing this, and the fire department and the park district is really at the head of this. While we are running it up the flagpole and trying to get the state to be aware and work with the other people that are on these task force, both internal and external with us. We're really kind of spearheading this because we've got 1,000 acres that we need to deal with dead trees on it. So this is kind of a recap of everything that we've been doing. I'm not sure Eric mentioned cutting the green tape, but that's one of the other things that we're trying to work on in conjunction with stewardship so that we can get in there to some of these areas that might be a little bit sensitive and still remove this tape. Because as everybody knows, if we can't get rid of these trees and we do have a catastrophic fire, then any of the species that we're trying to protect are not going to survive. So next slide. And here is that beginning picture that I just wanted to show everybody. As you can see, this is quickly turning into an issue from the fire chief's perspective of public safety as wildfire season approaches. So with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Eileen, may I just add one thing? And thank you for mentioning the cutting the green tape in terms of regulatory relief and mitigation relief for eradicating the trees. But one of the things that we have been discussing, especially with legislators, is the fact that these dead trees are upright. And I know you've made the point in the past that as long as they're upright, their embers can go great distances. And so that directly impacts not only the housing that's adjacent to our property, but also farther away. And so vast swaths of the East Bay are vulnerable to those embers. So that's a really important point in terms of public safety and public health.
Absolutely. The whole idea behind our plan is to reduce the fuel so that when a fire does happen, because we all know we can't prevent fire, but what we can do and what the plan, the wildfire hazard reduction and resource management plan, it's a mouthful. What it tries to do is make the fires survivable, right? So that we keep them on the ground, we keep the fire out of the tree canopies, so that they cannot send embers aloft and onto the wind. So it is quite a concern that the vegetation is upright because of the way that the air can funnel through it, and the flames, if it gets into the canopy, can travel. So that's kind of a fire department's nightmare when it comes to trying to attack that fire, because at that point it's going to be an overhead fight. And that's all that I have.
Questions from the board? Director Wieskamp. You're on mute, Director.
Thank God for all your work, and Eric too, trying to find funding. What should be done with diseased trees when you take them down so that they cannot spread it to something else? Do we know? Should they be burned? Are they ground up? What happens?
That's a very good question, Director Wieskamp. So, that's why stewardship is so imperative in this process, because we need to figure out why the trees are dying. The first is the why are they dying? And then the second part, which is attached to me, is, okay, how do we mitigate for fire danger? So at this point, stewardship is still doing the research along with all of their resources in the U.S. Forest Service and the USDA and Cal Berkeley. But at some point it becomes an issue of, okay, it doesn't matter, right? From my perspective, there's still a danger. The good news here is that in general, the overall belief is that there is not some brand new pathogen that we need to be concerned about. Right now, the best information that we have and the latest information that we have is that it is drought stress. And so that's the primary catalyst for this tree die-off. And then the very opportunistic pathogens or diseases that already live, in our forests are then having the opportunity, because these trees are stressed, to really flourish, which is causing death. That's the overall belief. However, we will mitigate if we do find out differently that there is some sort of a pathogen like Phytophthora, which is the sudden oak death, then we will use best management practices to remove it and to keep it either on place or on site or to incinerate it. But that's a whole different subject, because that's going to be a whole lot of timber and carbon that we need to get rid of.
I guess following up, I've been told that statewide, there's millions of dead trees out there. And since this drought extends quite a distance in California, that's got to be a huge fire danger. Is anybody looking at what to do with all the dead trees?
We are.
We are, but I mean, hopefully the state is.
Yes, one of the things that was brought up in our conversation with Tom Porter, the director of CAL FIRE, is that we're going to need to do something to sequester this carbon. And so there are practices that CAL FIRE is currently using, like incinerators. They have carbonators, they have curtain burners, and those are all tools that they use to incinerate all of the hundreds of thousands of tonnage of wood per acre. So at that point, moving forward, which is a long-term goal and not a short-term goal for us, we're going to need to come up with a plan to do that as well.
Best wishes.
Thank you.
So do the curtain burners prevent pollution out of the process?
Well, this is of course, this is something that we're really looking to the future with, right? But some of the ideas that are being tossed around are something like a curtain burner or a carbonator, which actually the results of a carbonator is to create biochar, which would be wonderful, because that way we would be sequestering even more carbon, right? And reducing our carbon footprint as a park district. Not only that, but biochar can be used for a multitude of things, like fertilizing our golf courses. But that's way down the road. Right now, we just need funding, and that's the short-term goals here are to get board support, which I know you will, and then to try to get funding, and then to get the green tape cut so that we can proceed forward with a plan. We can't start thinking about cutting down trees and that multitude without having the ability to pay for it.
Director Corbett, and then Director Eccles.
Well, thank you, Chief, for bringing us this very sobering but very clear picture of what we're up against. And, so proud once again of the Park District to be a leader in pre-mitigation and, getting out ahead of these issues that we don't always see everywhere. And, that's partly because of our history here at the Park District, but thank you so much. I just appreciate the fact that this visual presentation is so clear and obvious. And also thank you for getting in front of Chief Porter and others. I know Eric is working hard also to get the attention of the policymakers, and I'm sure you're probably using some of these photos, because those photos do tell a million words, just, with that, brownish color across the trees. So, as many elected officials as possible from our region that you can really get on board and, invested in this, the better, because, the truth is there'll be huge amounts of competition for these dollars around the state. So having a very strong advocacy piece very early, over and over again, so our our electeds will, do battle for us when it comes time for duking it out for those funds, will be very important. So thank you for the clarity of that. And, obviously we support you on this. And I think the other important part of our story is that we are leaders on these types of issues, and that we can be those that teach others best practices. And so that maybe we can sort of be in the lead on a statewide basis when people start thinking about, where should we send these dollars. But in any event, thank you. It's a little scary, but thank you for being on top of it.
Thank you, Director Corbett. And what's really important here too, I think, is that with the help of Eric and Lisa, we really got to send a message to the state that we're shovel ready, because we have the wildfire plan already involved, and we've got the infrastructure where we've got stewardship and our own fire department, that as soon as we have the resource that we're requesting from them, we can start. We're ready to go now.
Yes. And one last thing I would say, and absolutely true. And, thanks for being out in front of others to be able to tell that story too. One other thing, obviously we're talking about working with our legislators for state dollars and federal dollars. But as we have our conversation today, if we do about other planning, going to the ballot for issues, we really should be planning ahead for resources for these projects as well. And looking to, the region working together to see if we can get support from our local folks and our voters to help us deal with these really serious issues.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Lane, did I see your hand up?
I think you had somebody before me.
Okay.
Dennis, did you have?
It was Director Eccles and then Director Waspy.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, Chief Tiley, thank you so much for your leadership on this issue. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate how on top of it you are, and how proactive you are, because this is, as you say, this is a tinderbox. It's critical that, it's an emergency right now to deal with this. And so I appreciate your work, and of course the work of Eric and Lisa to get out there and try to, to talk to the state and regional officials and to seek funding. And as you say, we're shovel ready, so hopefully we'll be well positioned to get that money quickly. My question is, though, even if we get that money quickly, it's still going to be a little ways out. So I'm just wondering, I know you made this ask for to raise the on-call contract funding from 1 million to 4 million to 4 million. And I would certainly support that. I know we're not voting on that today, but I was curious to know how you came up with the 4 million, because I know we're constrained for funds, but that really sounds like a drop in the bucket. So I was just interested to know, what you thought you might be able to do with that $4 million.
Absolutely, Director Eccles. So the 4 million was simple. It was pretty simple math. I'm a pretty simple person. And it was actually a recommendation of my staff, because currently the 1 million on-call job orders, we have 4 contractors. So each one of them is allotted 500,000 to be able to spend. And so the 4 million would give each one of them $1 million. And we have to start someplace. And that's a short-term thing that we can do to effectively get the work started quicker.
Great, thank you.
It was as simple as that.
Director Waspy, then Director Lane.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you, Eileen, and thank you, Eric, for all the efforts you're doing. And I think that, I think the statement was made by Eileen, this is much bigger than us. And whereas I have total confidence in the Regional Parks Fire Department and all the efforts we're making in pre-disaster mitigation, I think just an incredible game changer when the trees are standing dead. I think that no amount of preparation we can do with the amount of time we have. I mean, the fire season is right around the corner. It's going to happen before we can get to all of this. And a resident of Cowster Valley, where most of the population of the dead trees are, to the north of us and a little bit to the east of us, I'm hoping we can I know we're aware of it. I know CAL FIRE is very much aware of it. I just hope we can make some arrangements, and I know you probably have already, but with city departments, I mean, Alameda County Fire, they're an excellent fire department, but I'm not sure if they're aware of the severity of what's going on here and what they have, because we can put out fires. We've done it for years and years. But once they get up in the tree canopies, standing, like everybody said before, if a burning fire brand can go for 2 miles, that can be in the middle of the city of Hayward from the forest we have in Anthony Chabot. So I wish you the best. I think I'll support any funding measures you need to do, but it looks to be really, really critical. You've got quite a challenge.
It is. And, really, like I said, I cannot thank Eric and Lisa enough in government affairs. They have been spearheading this. You can imagine my jaw dropped when they told me that we had a half-an-hour audience with the director of CAL FIRE. We did send him a follow-up report. It was a 1-page memo report with a thank you. And I know that I'm going to be doing my best to get our local unit chief, Jake Hess, and then division chief, Mike Marcucci, up in the air if I have to in Eagle, to have them fly over it or to have them look at it, come meet with me and go to Anthony Chabot and take a look at it. We're definitely running this issue up the flagpole in every way we can.
Great.
Director Lane.
So do our wildfire or our vegetation mitigation polygons cover all of the dead trees in our parks? Or do we need to go further than that and then get permits to go further?
I know where you're going with this. And so a lot of the die-off is within our recommended treatment areas. However, there are some areas that are outside of our recommended treatment area. And so stewardship is already on that to figure out how we can mitigate that. And I just saw Matt come on. Thank you very much, Matt. I'm going to let you talk about this, but just Director Lane, just know that we do have the tree die-off inside some of the recommended treatment areas and then some outside of the recommended treatment areas. So that's a good question. And I should have let you know that, but Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen. Matt Grawl, Chief of Stewardship. And I've been listening and here the whole time. So we're very engaged in stewardship. As Eileen has mentioned multiple times, has been really looking at this and is very engaged in this effort in looking at the causes and documenting the areas of impact. But for the areas outside of the plan, we're looking at several different options. One, there's the California Voluntary Treatment Program. It was established by CAL FIRE, and there's an EIR for that. So areas within the state responsibility area can get CEQA coverage through that. And so we're looking at the options for how we can apply that. For small areas that are just outside of our plan, if they're not in whipsnake habitat, we can do, we're looking at CEQA categorical exemptions for those, since they are not habitat and or not endangered species habitat, and how we can add those on while we're doing work within the fuels plan area. But areas outside the plan where we need broader coverage, we're looking at this statewide EIR and then thinking about other coverages we can get to cover it through CEQA. Now, the endangered species aspect, once you're working under the CAL voluntary treatment program, there are some exemptions for working in endangered species habitat areas. So we'll be looking at that. But we've also raised this issue with California Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to be aware it's an emerging issue. So the areas that don't fit under these other established programs, we'll need to work with them to look at opportunities. But I would say one overarching comment, though, is that where this problem is most severe is in the eucalyptus plantations and areas of acacia that are non-native, that by removing them, it is really a habitat benefit in many ways for many of the species that are impacted. So that will kind of lessen some of the potential concerns from the wildlife agencies in those areas. But if we do come up across problems that are more sensitive, we'll have to really negotiate with the agencies and work to get clearance to work in those areas. But there's plenty of work to do, I think, before we get in these more sensitive areas.
Great. Any other questions? Director Coffey.
Yeah, this sort of piggybacks on Director Lane's question, and that is the slide that Jeff put up regarding the sources of funding for the vegetation management program. And I'm wondering if those numbers in particular are general fund allocations for vegetation management, whether Jeff was, and his slide was addressing just the recommended treatment areas that are part of the FEMA related plan for the Oakland Berkeley Hills, or does that reflect the vegetation management programs that we have going throughout the two counties?
Yeah, thank you, Director Coffey. Jeff Rasmussen, Assistant Finance Officer. My slide actually addressed largely all of fuels management activities across the entire park district. There may be certain pockets, such as maybe some work done in operations or other parts of the fire department annual operating budget that relate to fuels management. So this is all the project funds related to the district's vegetation management program. A lot of it is directed towards the fuels management area, the plan area only, such as the FEMA grants and others. But the general funds that the district puts into those programs can be used throughout the district anywhere, and they are.
Yeah, well, that was important because I was wondering the outside sources of funding, the federal and state funding that was clearly addressing the plan and in support of the plan. And it occurred to me that our general funds would be, we got goats grazing everywhere, right? So that I just wanted to get that in my head. Thank you.
And point out lastly, a measure CC and FF are specifically on the plan area too, but district funds go everywhere.
Great. I think it's my turn now. I second all the comments by all the other directors. This climate change is upon us, and it's going faster than we expected. And I've always been a proponent that eucalyptus trees were going to be one of our most hazardous conditions because of their DNA. The bulk of these trees are blue gum from the island of Tasmania, and the island of Tasmania has a yearly rainfall of over 200 inches a year. And it was just a matter of time with climate change that these trees get affected by severe drought. And so I applaud the leadership that the Park District and Chief Tiley and our stewardship division has taken in reacting to this. And I also hope that when this is also a great time for opportunity. I hope when we look at these landscapes, where we're removing these trees, that we're looking at what do we want this landscape to look like. I know some of the areas in Redwood, I think some of those areas would be beneficial to restore, to plant redwoods. I think a lot of the areas in Anthony Chabot could be restored to grassland. And so I'm hoping we're looking at that as an opportunity to revision what these landscapes will be. And also in the meantime, I know you mentioned incinerators. I think we also earlier, I think when I first came on as a director, I think we had applied for grants for portable biomass generators, which also was part of the biochar thing. So I think there's an opportunity to not only generate electricity, but also get rid of our debris as well. So I applaud all of us and all of you for your hard work and your due diligence. And this is a crisis, and I have faith that we'll rise to the occasion, but hopefully we can do this in time. It seems like we are running a race. Climate change is forcing our hand in so many different ways, and this is so critical. And we also have our shorelines as well. So any support we can give you, I think the board has said we will do what we can. We will do what you need. And I think this is also an opportunity to, as mentioned, that for collaborations with other agencies, other cities, because this is not just our problems. It involves the entire state, really. But we are leaders, and I'm happy to be in that leadership, that role. I think we are meeting a challenge, and we are trained for this, and this is where we are. So I'm grateful for the leadership we have. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Director Rosario. Thank you, Chief Tiley and Eric. Appreciate all of that. This is a perfect segue for the next item, but I just want to make sure that that Director Rosario, that you know that we're about an hour behind our agenda. So I just want to do a time check, which means that most likely we will be finishing like around 5:30. So I
Okay.
just want us to be cognizant of that change in the agenda. And for the next sessions, we will do our best to be as brief as possible. Because these items are introductory items, we will continue to discuss them at different levels throughout the year. You will see them coming time and time again as we're resolving for them.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay.
So without any further ado, we have the next one, which is district-wide funding needs and future revenues with AGM Ocker and Eric Fuller again.
Thank you, Anna. I wanted to check in and see if the general manager had any comments. Saw her on her screen. No, good.
No,
Great.
no, I'm good. Keep moving.
Keep moving. Yes, that's a good comment. All right. Well, yeah, as Deputy General Manager Alvarez said, these are introductory items that we're bringing to you. You'll hear a lot more. Same with this item we have today. So I'm here with Eric Fuller and Lisa Baldinger, and we're going to try to give you a brief update. I think Eric is going to kick us off. Correct, Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Eric Fuller, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs. And could actually go to the next slide, please, Lisa. Just wanted to start by saying, you know, Director Corbett mentioned funding opportunities and being leaders in the wildfire space. Actually, a number of directors said that, and we are, and we do need to share those best practices with our partners. But in order to do that, we obviously need to be able to fund the work. So this presentation is sort of an overview, as it says, and it really reflects that all agencies could always use more funding. And, you know, our organization has been particularly good about leveraging using our property tax revenue, our bond measure revenue, our CC and FF revenue to leverage other money, particularly in the areas of acquisition with the HCP and with restoration and project delivery through our grant, our GREAT grant program. And that project delivery is a very important piece of what we do. Not just to complete the projects, but it's also important in terms of the overall economic benefit to the community. We did a study with Beacon Economics last year, and we learned that our project delivery on 93 projects coming up will generate over $214 million in revenue for the region and create 1,199 jobs. But the other piece of that study was how much annually that funding is, and that's about 20 to keep those projects maintained and staffed. The annual revenue is about 23 million and the annual number of jobs is about 131. And those two categories are some of the hardest areas to raise funds for. And so this presentation today is a snapshot of those kinds of needs and a snapshot of what the public is interested in, and then a snapshot of the possible funding opportunities to address those needs. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Deborah. Hopefully everybody had time to read what was on the slide. I didn't think we needed to reread it to explain some of our funding needs. So Deborah.
Thank you, Eric. Again, today, we know that the district has many needs out there. A lot of them have to do with the fact that we're constantly growing, we're constantly acquiring and managing new acres of open space. We have so much growth in our park usership. We've seen, you know, it explode with lots of visitors. And so this is really focusing on what Eric was highlighting, areas where a additional funding initiative has in the past targeted certain things that are of interest based on what we know is going on and the polling. And so the first column is really focusing on operating. So operating and maintenance needs, we have successfully heard from the public where they have interest in additional staffing. We have a practice of keeping a pipeline for properties that are due to open up. And in that list, we have almost $9 million logged for the next 5 years in order to open these parks. Some of those things that we talk about that we're looking to open, we had planning go through and look at the properties that are coming online the soonest or have the availability to do that. It's about just over 20 acres we're talking about. And those include the Western Hills property in Sibley. They include the Clayton Ranch, Deer Valley area, looking at Concord Hills, partial openings there, Doolin Canyon, staging areas at Pleasanton Ridge. And then in the future, we have the, the desire for the Arata Ranches and the Burrells. Those are all big projects out there that we're going to need additional funding for that are not part of our current budgets. And then resource management. We just had a huge presentation about what is going on out there related to climate change, but our vision and our mission talks about protecting wildlife. We have water sources that we're trying to protect and keep them healthy, shorelines. All of those areas definitely need additional funding, and we're starting to inventory those areas and really get some data to back up what we know is going on out there. And then infrastructure. We have been around for a long time. We've made so much progress in inventorying our assets and determining what status they're in, what state they're in. So we have a really great plan of how to keep our infrastructure maintained. There's a lot of renovation and replacement work out there. Even as of today, even though we've been making progress and the board has adopted a funding policy, we still have $90 million of deferred maintenance that we need to get caught up on. And we're doing a great job at keeping our paved trails and roads in good shape as well. But there's definitely new regional parks that need to come online and trail connections to be made. So those are just some of the highlights of where we have examples of need. Thank you. Next slide.
Hi, good afternoon, Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Management Analyst, and I'll start walking us through our most recent voter survey and some of the themes that came out of that you saw a little bit reflected just in that financial slide Deborah walked us through, because of course the spot we want to be in for any sort of voter commitment list is that combination of the public's priorities and interests and identified needs and the items staff can deliver on or expansion of staff thereof. So we will be reviewing today a December 2020 survey that was conducted during December 9th to 13th. It was a phone and text to online survey because as we've shared with the board previously, it's been identified that cell phone is really where we're getting a bulk of responses. It was also conducted in both English and Spanish. And our sample size was a total of 600 likely voters for the November 2022 survey. And then a subset of that was 400 likely June 2022 voters. That way we had a substantial sample size for the June ballot alone and then expanded on it inclusive of November. So to start us off, we like to get those baseline questions and identify kind of who we're speaking to, how familiar are they with the East Bay Regional Park District. So as you can see on your screen, we had the majority, almost 90%, who were aware of the Park District going into the survey. And this is just off of name alone. We then introduced them to the Park District with a high-level overview, and then ask about how often do you visit and utilize the park. So the majority of folks that we were talking to in the survey visit at least monthly, if not more frequently. So that's a really great amount of visitation and familiarity with the Park District system. We then ask, okay, well, you're visiting our parks. What's your overall experience? And it's great to see consistently just a really positive overall experience from those that we're speaking to when we're doing the voter polls. So 91% of those who responded felt that the Park District experience was either excellent or good. And I'll just do a quick overview. So this is without even bringing up increasing of funding. We asked the survey responses, what are some identified important features within a park in terms of where the Park District should put its funding. And so far and away, wildfire protection continues to be a high priority of the public. This is complemented by additional climate change mitigation and adaptation work, including storm erosion and urban creek protection, as well as just holistic wildlife conservation. Youth jobs, we've seen that they've consistently been high interest, but as we're in an economic downturn during the pandemic, it's increased in terms of interest by the public. And then really related to our conversation today, the public is interested in infrastructure repair and upgrade. And we share sort of some themes of what that would look like for the public. And when we say infrastructure repair and upgrade, we're speaking to restrooms, which is the background photo on this slide, bike racks, and other sort of smaller amenities that can get a lot of use across the district by many different people. You can see a few other priorities, such as maintaining new facilities, community programs for underserved communities, job opportunities for formerly incarcerated individuals, such as a wildfire program, and then regional trail connections as it might relate to our Iron Horse and Bay Trail. And with that, I'll pass it off to Eric to continue the poll overview.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And those amenities that you speak of are the ones that are difficult to raise money for, the restrooms and the water bottle filling stations and things like that. So not surprising that those popped up, but also why we would need a certain kind of funding stream to finance those. This was the question, and Lisa indicated that we asked voters that vote primarily in both June and February, June and November, and then just those that vote in November. And it's important to note that this number of 71% was basically even whether it was the June election or the November election. And so we asked the question of support for funding, and 71% said yes. And as you can see, the darker green is Alameda County, the lighter green is Contra Costa, and then the blue is overall. So slightly stronger in Alameda, which is has been historically the case. Next slide, please. And then again, just to break it down a little bit more by geographic area, Southwest Alameda, pretty strong, very strong in Northwest Alameda, and also in Central Contra Costa County, and then not to be totally unexpected, a little bit softer in East Contra Costa County. Next slide. And then we asked, and we'd mentioned those issues earlier where we solicited what folks would be interested in then, and then we asked again about would you be willing to pay to conduct those activities. And so wildfire protection, we're right up in the 80% willingness to pay. Park staff positions, very high, and a good sign for a potential parcel tax measure that can fund staff. Climate change and mitigation and adaptation, public access, regional job support. So all of those categories really above 70%. So very strong and good messaging for the future. And then I turn it back over to Lisa.
Real quick, to give a lay of the land, we'll be speaking both to what we currently know in terms of preliminary understanding as we approach a decision, and then also what we need to know moving forward. So this first slide is what we know, and in your packet, this graph is expanded on. So one consideration is that we currently do have a $1 a month tax in the Measure FF zone. And so in your packet, you have total annual revenue without the Measure FF zone, as well as with the Measure FF zone laid out at $1, $3, and $5. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, as Eric just shared, the identified public priorities throughout this poll, as well as some of our listening sessions with the public of late, are really wildfire protection, far and away, but also we're seeing consistent support for the district staff positions. There's been an increase in kind of awareness of what our staff do, likely thanks to public affairs campaign during COVID of We Are EBRPD, really educating on workforce opportunities here at the district, sea level rise mitigation along our 55 miles of bay and delta shoreline. And then as we've been touching on that infrastructure repair and upgrade, what really makes for a Pleasant Park District visit of nice restrooms, water bottle filling stations, and hand washing stations. And to dive a little bit more into potential revenue, I'll pass it over to AGM Ocker.
Thank you, Lisa. I think some of the things that, well, first of all, we're here for you today because in the first workshop, all the board members shared that they wanted to talk about funding for district-wide items. And this board of directors has always been a strong supporter of fiscal stability. So there's a lot of questions that are still out there and a lot of decisions to be made. So this is just an introductory, but we have in the past used a team to help us calculate these revenue numbers. We have a team that includes like bond counsel that will advise us on the different types of financing measures that may come about based on these conversations. We have a revenue consultant that helps us run the numbers. We have to make a lot of decisions, and it's a big team effort. There's a huge team that gets assembled throughout the district to put all of this together. And I think the next slide just even talks about what is the boundary that we're looking at? So there are, funding types, boundaries, the rates, all of those things. As we gather more information, we get closer to knowing the answers to those things. So Lisa, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And so just before you can see both the full district, so our Alameda and Contra Costa County, and then the Measure FF zone, which our most recent polling really shows support within that zone for increased funding for the district. So it's definitely a very positive and park supportive area of the district. Well, really across the counties all is. And so with that, we'll just do a quick overview of our estimated timeline. This timeline is based off of the Measure FF process in 2016 and 2017, leading up to the November 2018 ballot. And so as you can see, we've laid out for just consideration, we'd really need to do some additional voter surveys to determine what that funding threshold is that will be based in, as well as creating a public education campaign for awareness and transparency on this process, as well as to get input from the public on a potential commitment list. And then you see we have a number of months where we'll be drafting the commitment list based off of the internal identified needs and priorities of the board and general manager, as well as the input from stakeholder and the public. And then it would be in January of 2022, so a little less than a year from now, I guess, that we would post that draft commitment list on our website publicly for continued input over a number of months. And then it would be in May of 2022 that the board, should the board choose to move forward, would make that final vote to go to the ballot for November of 2022. And with that, I'll pass it off to Eric to wrap us up.
And that voter survey that is on this slide, and we can go to the next slide, please. It indicates the idea that we need to ask about dollar amounts and what the revenue is. I think Director AGM Ocker mentioned that because that 71% support that we showed earlier there was not a threshold of a dollar amount that we asked. It was just, would you be willing to support funding? So our most immediate need would be to do a survey that would really lay that out and see as that last chart said, $1, $3, $5, or whatever level that we decided. And then we would need to create a cross-divisional steering team. Informally, we've done some of that in terms of just making sure we're understanding what the needs are and documenting that, but it would need to be formalized. And then obviously, I was just saying, we're documenting some of the needs, so a more thorough, deeper dive on that. And then obviously working with our public affairs on public education and potential measure and also the messaging. So that's where we are today. As AGM Ocker mentioned, this is just an initial presentation, and we would welcome continued conversation. And I'm sure we would also entertain the possibility of having a continued conversation in legislative committee. But with that, would open it up for questions.
Excellent. Questions?
Did they include the part of my area, which is LARPD and the Park District, that voter survey?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. If you're going to try to get something passed out in this section, I think you're going to have to be aware that LARPD needs money too. And the idea would have to be some way both could be included. And I think that could happen. But I don't know if you ask any questions about that or not.
We did not ask about LARPD specifically. We have considered what mechanism we could use to have something equivalent to the local grant program in WW. It's much more difficult with a parcel tax because you're getting smaller amounts of money at any given time, whereas a bond you can leverage a higher level of funding. That's one of those questions that what we need to learn and what we need to find out.
I think you need to at least have a conversation with LARPD to see they've had a terrifically hard hit as a small district. And personally, I think our people out here in Dublin, particularly in Livermore, would like to see Doolan Canyon open sometime in the near future. And LARPD certainly needs funding for their projects. So whatever you can do, I'm interested any way I can help.
Any other questions? Director Lane?
Yeah, I think this next survey is very important because, the one election I was involved in that we lost had to do with, and we were fundraising for maintenance, and that simply does not have, just maintenance, and there are other things. We articulated it differently, but people will be very supportive of bond issues. But that, and I was glad to see support for staff in your initial survey. But, on the west side with now FF, that is always the area where they support their regional parks. But you get further to the east and you're going to have to really find out how people feel about a parcel tax and about having the funds, goodly part of those funds go to staff, because that's, 71 sounds really good right now, but it's an uphill battle as far as I'm concerned. And so parcel tax, we will need 2/3. Is that correct?
Correct.
Director Corbett, then Director Waspy.
I have a few things. One, it is true when we poll and when we go out for measures like FF, we might be more popular in some areas than others. But I think part of that is the knowledge that people have about the district and the number of people who may use the parks. Obviously, when people vote, they vote for things that they believe are of benefit to them. So I think work can be done to, find ways to do more education about the park district, information about what we do, what we provide in some parts of the district where we're not as popular, so to speak. I think that that's an ongoing thing. And obviously that's something we do on the natural here at the Park District with the great work of our Public Affairs Department. But that is something that I think we have to think seriously about as a front load to anything we may do in the future for support from our local communities. Taking a look at the timeline, I would just say very quickly, and working on Measure FF with Dee as co-chair, timelines should always be planned to be quicker than you think you need them. So if there's a way to shave some time off of that to be ready in some areas, I think that that's really, really important, because sometimes things slip. So that's just my thoughts and working through FF. And then I noticed that you're putting together a cross-divisional team. What role will board members play in being helpful in supporting the efforts to get community support for these things, for these issues? Have you thought of that?
I would think a very prominent role. The cross-divisional reference was really for us to develop what we think are priorities, but that would certainly, staff from a staff standpoint, but that would certainly be vetted by both the board and the public, and obviously the general manager.
Okay, so there'll be opportunities if some of us want to jump in and be helpful. You'll let us, Eric?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. Good to hear that. And then with regard to the slides that we just saw, will we be getting copies of those? I don't think we got them in advance, did we? I would really like to take another quick look at some of those slides, especially, you know, where our support is in the various different communities and based on the polling you've done. So thank you. Really great, exciting. We've got some data to help us start moving forward. So thank you for all of that.
And I just would add to I don't know if it's answering or just adding to what Director Corbett just said, but we have seen longitudinally our support throughout the district, including East County, has grown significantly since I've worked at the district, you know, in the last 12 years or so. And we also did do 2 other surveys last year that showed 96% of the folks that responded supported. And one of those was a voter survey, and the other was just a general survey that matched the census. And in both of them, it was at 96% that we have become very important to people's mental and physical health. And so I think the idea that we're important in people's lives is really, especially during the pandemic, has really resonated.
Yes, I agree.
Great. I think Director Waspy, then Director Coffey.
Well, yeah, I would just add that, you know, I fully support this, and I think this is the time. I really do. The awareness of the Park District through the COVID period and the support we've got based on the service that we provided and the respite that we provided is really important, and I think we should strike while we can. But I do agree with Director Lane. It's a little different as the farther east you go, and a parcel tax for maintenance is going to be difficult. But I think with this fire threat that we have, and I look back to the days, Dee, when we were called park rangers did fight fire. That was, I don't know how we would continue that or try to work that into it, but you know, park rangers are resource protectors, they're firefighters, they're the whole realm of things. So if we can emphasize that, I think that's very important. And you know, I hate to say this, but I think I would love to see a focused survey at the areas that we think are well, maybe not as supportive, and see what they really are looking for. And I know you'll do that, but I just have to add this, the whole access thing, I think, is going to be really, really important. And I refer to our last board meeting where we say we're welcoming, we want everybody to come to the parks, and then we close down Vargas Plateau, areas of Vargas Plateau. I think that's going to be a real bad thing. And I think we really need to address getting people more into the parks and not limiting people's access to parks.
Excellent. Director Coffey.
Eric and maybe Carol, are we giving any thought to the possibility of encouraging a citizens initiative on the theory that it would only require 50% plus 1 approval vote?
I think that, yes, we have given thought to that. I think that court, and so Carol probably should chime in here. I think that court case, there are court cases that have been upheld, that's been upheld. I don't know that it's actually the law. So appreciate Carol's input on that. And then of course we'd have to identify a citizens group that would do that. But yes, we have thought about it. It's one of those things of what we need to know or learn more about category.
So Carol Victor, District Council, I don't have much to add to that. And Director Coffey, I confess that I would have to do a little bit of Googling to tell you what the state of the law is, but I can probably do that by the end of the workshop. And I do, you know, I think the only issue, it has to be a true citizen effort in terms of coming within that 51% threshold. And then the other thing is I'm not, with a 2-county district of over 3.5 million, I believe, I'm not sure what the signature requirements would be for that, but it's worth looking into.
don't try to do it during the workshop. I know lawyers who have spent quite a bit of time on it.
Okay.
There's a risk with it. Is the issue.
Yes.
Great. Director Lane.
Okay, I just have something that I want to agree. I want to agree with Dennis on the Rangers as firefighters. I mean, people really appreciate our Rangers in the parks, and the vast majority of them are really friendly types. And so I think we ought to think about how we can, in talking about firefighting, fold in that concept of Rangers as firefighters. I mean, one of the things that people have been talking to me about is that funny little sign where cattle are grazing, where they've got fire hats on the cows, and they're calling them firefighters, so anything that that indicates our activity in that regard, I think is really noticed by people.
Yeah. Elizabeth, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Oh, you're muted.
I think it's been covered really, but I appreciate everybody's comments. I really appreciate the report, and I, obviously we do need a lot more money for firefighting and fire prevention and all of these other important priorities that we're putting forward today and the ongoing priorities.
Great. Well, I think this is I'm in favor of going forward. I think it's time. I agree with Dennis. The iron is hot. Strike now. The only question is for our general manager and the executive team is, are you ready? Because it's a long haul. And to Director Corbett's question about board involvement, you will be involved if we go forward. Ellen and I were both giving talks to different, to all of our cities and councils and mayors and whatever throughout the district. So one other question that needs to be answered in your survey is for the Measure FF folks, would they be willing to layer on an additional, and then, or would they support, would they support an additional, or would they consider they've paid enough, or do they want special compensation? So, and then the other thing, as far as park rangers, a third of our firefighter or park rangers are on-call firefighters. And number two is I think we should leverage our park rangers as no park rangers, no open parks. We need rangers to open parks, and that's the impetus for doing a district-wide, because we have so many land bank status parks that need to be open, and we can't open them unless they get staffed with park rangers. So with that, Director Corbett.
Sorry, I just have one quick question and one quick comment. The quick comment is we sure have a lot of great resources and assets to start showing off in Contra Costa County that could potentially be open. And so I think that that's a good thing to promote. And then the other thing is, I don't know, Carol, you're going to have to guide me. I don't want to ask a question I'm not supposed to be asking, but are we looking at the legal issues surrounding overlaying revenue measures and knitting revenue measures together? Are we looking at that? Because I think we probably somewhere in the planning, wherever that falls, we certainly need some very good advice on that.
Yes, Director Corbett, there's several legal issues that we're going to have to discuss with the board in terms of putting a measure forward. We did a community facilities district for FF, and we simply could not do a 2-county communities facility districts, the administration of that would be overwhelming. So we have to look at the structure, if it's a flat rate or how a rate would be structured. The other thing that the board, just to keep in mind in terms of timelines, if the board were to decide to do a district election, meaning carving out some portions of the district from a future measure, the register of voters need that, the election officials need those maps 6 months before the election. So we just have to keep in mind those timelines, and there's going to be a number of decision points for the board in terms of how measures should be structured.
Yeah, but even a little more specifically, and you've probably thought about this, Carol, you know, we have different measures that are expiring at different times. And if we did make a decision to go, I know we're not making a decision today, but if we were to make a decision to go district-wide or a portion of the district, you know, the issue is, can we, you know, knit them together? In other words, bring something in that will connect to something we already have in the timelines. Do you know what I mean? Something may expire and then become part of a new measure that we pass. So that, to me, is a really important thing to figure out, along with, you know, where we go, and what we do. Yeah, thanks.
I will say, Director Corbett, I think there was a precedent for that in Contra Costa County on their transportation measure. I think there was a time period where two taxes would be in effect at the same time, and then the one would ease off and the other one would move forward. So
Yeah,
we can definitely look at that.
we definitely need to figure that out. Yeah, thank you very much.
And didn't that fail?
Yes.
There you go.
Unfortunately.
The reminder.
Okay, with that, I believe we're due for a break.
We are due for a break. Sorry. So we are running a little bit late. We have 2 more items. We can, you know, talk about that last item on whether we can accommodate that after we get through our break. And would you like to take a 20-minute break or a 15-minute break right now?
15.
15 is good.
Let's see, 15, and maybe we'll make it in 20.
Great. We will be back at 4 o'clock.
If everyone could please mute themselves and stop their video, we're going to put a break slide up. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda.
You're welcome.
And Director Lane, I'm going to give you a call.
Robin, we're going to put that slide up.
Thank you, Director Rosario, for confirming your vote. You have a question, a similar question for Director Lane, if she comes on right before we get started again. Just to confirm what we have.
Deborah, did you get votes from all 7 board members?
I have a question for Director Lane still, but everyone else we have 5 votes for, yes. So when Beverly signs back on, I might ask her a quick question.
And just
Okay.
Oh,
thank you. Director Lane, I don't think we are positive we got your votes correct. So I was wondering if it would.
Did you just get 4?
Yeah, I think maybe, would you mind confirming the numbers that you put in, or you could put it in the chat if you don't have that right away.
Yeah, 2, 5, 7, 9, 10.
2, 5, 7, 9, 10. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I went back and 2 wasn't marked, but I'd already
Yeah.
submitted it.
Right, okay.
Got it?
Well, I think we're gonna wait and do the results at the end of the meeting so that we can keep moving ahead.
Okay, I'm gone again.
okay, Deborah, just so you know, I have a hard stop at 5:30. I have to go pick up my daughter.
Yeah.
So,
I think we can. I think
that is a worthy goal, Elizabeth.
Yes, we can do
I
that.
hope so. She wanted me to come early today. That might not happen, but I definitely want to get there on time.
Right, so yeah, we'll check and see if all the directors are almost ready.
Doesn't that scene look peaceful and green? No dead trees.
Looking into Redwood Bowl, I believe.
I mean, it just looks lovely. Perfect.
Yes, that is the Redwood Bowl. Beautiful.
We need a CEO of a very, very successful company to want to adopt us and put money in for Parks for People.
We have our Regional Park Foundation working on that.
Yeah, that's Juliana's job.
Male, female, whatever, a couple, we don't care. Are we influenced by money? Yes, for a positive goal.
Are we back?
Mentally or physically?
Trickling in here.
Yes, I think we have most of our directors. Let's see. Our next.
Thank you, by the way,
presenter-
Deborah. Great job on all this.
You're welcome.
So much stuff.
It's more fun in person, I will say.
Yes, I know. Especially the dog.
Imaginary ice cream was not fun.
Oh no.
I
owe you an
I
ice cream now.
Maybe we should have had delivery from Fenton's or something.
Couldn't you just taste that ice cream?
Of course, it saved a lot of calories. There we go.
Oh yeah.
How did you guys know to put Rocky Road in there? That's what I want to know.
All right. So yeah, Director Rosario, whenever you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and drop this screen and let us know, and we will unpause the recording when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay,
let's go
Robin,
ahead.
well, Robin needs to let us know when he's ready.
Okay.
Ready.
Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.
Great. We switched Prime Govs. Welcome back, everyone.
Yes, Sydney had to leave. Thank you.
And we will continue with our annual board workshop. And we are at item Oh, there's no numbers, but we are at the equity in mission delivery and inclusive community engagement.
Thank you, Director Rosario. Good afternoon, board presidents, board members, esteemed colleagues, and members of the public. Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez at your service. Jim, do you mind putting up the slide? The slideshow? Thank you. So the next focus topic, equity in mission delivery and inclusive community engagement, speaks to the board's interest voiced at the last board workshop in reference to inclusion and equity when delivering the mission of the East Bay Regional Park District. I am joined by AGM O'Connor, who will be presenting with me. Also, please note that this presentation brings forward a collective effort by multiple divisions and staff members who are joining us today and are available to answer any questions that you may have, including the Executive Director of the Regional Parks Foundation and AGM of Public Affairs, Carol Johnson. Next slide. Let's see. To get us started and as a way of background, today's presentation will focus on equity in mission delivery, recognizing that there are institutional and structural barriers for people to access our parks and benefit equally from our programs and services. The best place to start this conversation is through an overview of the Park District's existing community outreach programs for underserved and under-resourced East Bay communities. Jim will showcase programs focusing on the strength and influence in working in partnership with others towards delivering environmental literacy, outdoor recreation, and learn to swim and water safety programs, which are so critical in communities of color, as well as a body of work from public affairs in reaching multicultural groups in the East Bay to connect people with the health and wellness benefits that are derived from our regional systems of parks. He will also highlight our primary partner and funding sponsor for these programs and initiatives, the Regional Parks Foundation, which through its funding, they are sharing in or leaning in to our commitment to reach our vision of forever providing the opportunity for a growing and diverse community to experience nature nearby, which is a good segue to introduce future initiatives that will contribute to the ability to move closer to this vision. So as part of today's presentation, I will be speaking to these new initiatives, which truly speaks to staff responding to the board's policy direction. So I like to think of these things more like in the sphere of you said and we did. So there's a lot here to cover. So I will respectfully ask the board members to defer your questions until the end of the presentation. That way we can keep the meeting going. And so with this brief introduction, Jim, would you like to join us?
Good afternoon, board members. Jim O'Connor. I am your AGM of Operations. Really quickly, I just want to say thank you for your comments regarding the park ranger staff. They and the other park staff are truly the face of the Park District, and I really appreciate your comments. It's very nice of you and well received. Thank you. Okay, let me see. I'll get my pointer working here. Okay, so first of all, just I want to talk more generally about the concept that we use, the terminology we use as community outreach. Really, there are two main focuses in community outreach. One is community outreach, which is focused on economically disadvantaged communities and individuals. And the other one is our multicultural outreach, which focuses on communities of color, primarily around health and wellness programming. Another thing that's really important is the strategy that we use in all of these programs, which is really connecting with community partners that work with our targeted populations. And this is a really important strategy because these community partners already have the connection in these communities. They have the trust of community individuals. And that's really important to our success because they've already made the inroads and the relationships. And that's a really important part of our strategy. So I just wanted to make sure I took a moment to talk about that. And you'll see that throughout the thread of this presentation. Okay, so the first area we're going to talk about is our community outreach is really about economic barriers. So we focus on economically disadvantaged families and youth, veterans and seniors. We also have programs that are focused primarily on individuals with disabilities. And then we also have public school programs that we look at what we under the title of Title I programs, but primarily those that are 50% or greater of their students are participating in federal free and reduced lunch programs. And a lot of the programs that we work in are, as you see on the screen here, Antioch, Ashland, Sharyland, areas of Alameda County, Oakland, the Pittsburgh Bay Point area, and Richmond, of course, and you'll see that as we move through the presentation. So the first area, the first group that we want to talk about within the Park District is our Community Outreach Coordinator, Jamie Rosati. This is a full-time position in operations that focuses exclusively on community outreach programming. Part of Jamie's work is doing community needs assessments, which evaluates potential community partners that are working with our target populations. And these are just a few, just for time's sake, I'm not going to go through all of these. These are some, just a brief smattering of the partners that we work with annually. And this is from 2019. You can see the East Bay Center for the Blind, Building Blocks for Kids Collaborative, which is in Richmond, Livermore and Martinez Veterans Administrations, and the Antioch Senior Center. This is just a few of the partners that, that Jamie has identified and does programming with or passes on to other departments, which you'll see later on in the presentation as community partnerships. Just to come to some of the programs that Jamie does within the realm of her work. One is Oakland Unite, which is a teen program based in Oakland, of course. Antioch Senior Center, the lower picture in that is actually the North Oakland seniors group, and they're out on a field trip at Del Val. The next picture is the Alameda County Police Activities League that we've done programming with. And another part of Jamie's work is that she also works with HR, and we do these really incredible job fairs for youth, which is a great way that we connect with youth through all of our communities throughout the district. Those are just some of the programs that Jamie does. In 2019, she worked through 91 programs, serving almost 3,500 individuals. And then our interpretive and recreation staff also do outreach programming for economically disadvantaged families and individuals. One of the programs that we've had for many, many years is Park in a Day Camp. This is a week-long day camp that's free to participants through funding through the Regional Parks Foundation. Our 2019 partners were Community School for Creative Education, which is based in Oakland, and Brothers on the Rise, which is based in Oakland also. The next program you see is Community Outreach Outdoor Program, which is our co-op program. This provides day camps, 3-day camps, and then 3-day overnight experience for partners that we work with over a course of 3 years. So we rotate our partnership every 3 years. Currently, we're working with City of Richmond Community Services, the Radical Monarch, which is a program that works with girls of color in Berkeley, Oakland, and Richmond. And also BORP, which is the Bay Area Outreach Program, which is a program focused on individuals with disabilities throughout the Bay Area, but is based in Berkeley. We worked with them for many, many years. Teen Eco Action is a youth leadership program. It's a week-long youth leadership camp that we put on. And our partners for that program are Oakland Parks and Rec, City of Richmond Community Services, and Ambrose Recreation Park District, which serves the community of Bay Point. And then finally is one that's near and dear to my heart is Adventure Crew. This is a school year-long program where we engage with youth in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to give them a longitudinal experience. We are now working with Richmond YES, and also our newest partner is Peralta Hacienda, which is based in Oakland. And so we've started new cohorts with them. Moving on, I'm going to start talking about school programs very quickly. For some of you who may not be aware, these are our 8 sectors, interpretive sectors. The Delta sector is based out of Big Break. The Northeast sector is based out of Black Diamond Mines. The Northwest is based out of Tilden. The Central is based out of Crown Beach. Our southwest is based out of Coyote Hills. And of course, our southeast is based out of the Sunol Visitor Center. And we also have centers. We have our mobile education, which is also based out of Crown Beach. And we have the Tidewater, which is our recreation services facility. Okay, just we had received several questions from board members regarding our programming demographics around race primarily. So we did do some work. We have not traditionally collected race information related to our school programs, but the state does keep records regarding race at the school level. So the California Department of Education keeps demographic data on every school and school district. So what we did, I asked staff to look at this information. So first I want to talk about the numbers of programs that we work with from an economic standpoint. So we use the word Title I schools, and in our vernacular, that those are schools where 50% or greater of the population of the school are receiving free or reduced lunch programs. They're participating in free or reduced lunch programs. So when you see on this chart, Title I, that's what we're talking about. And if you look, and you can see my pointer, the total schools in 2 counties that we're talking about are 957 schools total. In 2019, we provided services to 308 schools. So those are the basic numbers. Title I schools that we provided service to were 124, which is 40% of the total schools we served. Non-Title I schools, 127, which is 41% of the total. And then we also provided programs to private schools, 57% schools, or 19% of the total. And just as a reference point, using our criteria of the 957 schools in the 2 counties, 35% are considered Title I, 37% are non-Title I, and then there's 28% are private schools. And then the map just shows how those overlay on the map of the district. You can see most of those are in this Richmond, Oakland, and Berkeley area, and then down into Hayward. So that's where a lot of our program, and then East County was another focus of our school programs. Okay, I'll move on to the demographic data. As I said, what staff did was we took our participant data numbers at each school site, and we extrapolated race data from the California Department of Education demographic data that they collect. So that's what this chart is showing. The top bar chart shows the race breakdown of all the students that participated in our school programs in 2019. So in this case, in case you can't see it, I'll just go through this. Hispanic or Latino is 36% of total students that participated. White is 22% of total students. Asian is 18%. Black or African American is 10%. Filipino is 4%, and then multi-racial or others are 10%. Now below that is the bar chart, which is based on the 2010 census data. This is for both our counties. This is the race distribution for 2 counties together. So as you can see, the school program participant racial data closely matches the 2 county racial demographic data. I think that's the point we wanted to show you, is that we're trying to match that. We're pretty closely matched with the overall demographic data just based on that. Now, that is not the same as an exact count. We extrapolated from the state school data. For instance, just as a rough example, if you had 100 students from a school and the racial makeup of that school was 10% African American or Black, then we would say out of that 100, we would say 10 were of that race. So that's how we extrapolated. That's not the same, of course, as an exact count of participants, which is something we'd like to move more towards in the future. And that's one of our goals for future work. Okay, I'm going to move on. So this map is based on census data. Where you see the darker colors, the darker red colors, these are families that are 2 times the federal poverty rate, which is around $51,000 a year, based again on the census data. So if you see the darker color, that means a larger percentage of families within those census tracts or fall into that category of less than 2 times the federal poverty rate of $51,000. And you can see from this map that the primary areas where this occurs is in the Richmond area, this Oakland area here, and then out, of course, in East County, and then down into Hayward. So what we did, just to show you where we're working, remember, community outreach is about economic need, is we just wanted to overlay. These are all of our programs that fall in operations that fall under the community outreach umbrella. And you can see that most of those are overlaying where these communities of need are from an economic standpoint. They overlay those communities pretty closely. So you can see, again, a lot of programming here, especially our community outreach program in Richmond, in this Oakland area, and then of course out in East County. And there is also another concentration here in Concord, and then down into Hayward. So we just wanted to show you that those programs where we're focusing our time and energy and community outreach is falling into those areas of need. Okay, public safety also plays a role in community outreach, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about their programs. These are just a couple of examples of the programs that public safety through Lifeguard Services works with. One is the Palma Sia Baptist Church. This is primarily an African-American church based out of Hayward, and they've been doing swim lessons for youth and seniors since 2015 at that location. Vamos a Aprender is a Spanish language water safety program that occurs at Del Valle, Shadow Cliffs, and Concha Loma, because these are areas where we have a high Latinx community, and so Lifeguard Services has been providing these water safety classes, and we think that makes a big safety improvement. Village Community Resource Center, this is a specific community in the Brentwood area, and they do junior guard programs here, learn to swim, and water safety programming in this area here. And of course, I think all of you are aware of the Life Jacket Loaner program, which the Regional Parks Foundation has funded since 2011. And that's been an incredibly successful program in reducing and increasing water safety throughout the district, throughout all of our aquatic facilities. Okay, and I'll move on to the other thread of our overall umbrella, which is multicultural outreach. Mostly this is done through Mona Coe in public affairs. These are some of the partners that she's worked with in terms of race or ethnic groups. I think you can see from this list, it's pretty amazing in terms of the breadth and the diversity of the groups that she's been working with over the probably the last 10 years. This list is Carol Johnson and I were talking this probably over the last 10 years or so. I mean, this is a very, very diverse group of partners. Just going to move on here. This is a map of where these partnerships have occurred over these years. You can see it's across the district. It's a district-wide. I just wanted to highlight a couple of these partners that have been long-term partners, including the UCSF Benny Hoff Children's Hospital in Oakland. That's been a long-term health and wellness partnership with the district. The migrant program, the New Haven Adult Education Program in Union City. And then of course our long-term partner, Kaiser Permanente, which we do in several areas throughout the district. And they've been a really an incredible partner with us in health and wellness programming. And then of course, final slide for me is I have to tout the Regional Parks Foundation has been really essential for funding all of this work over many, many years. In 2020, the Regional Parks Foundation funded $716,000, more than $716,000 for community outreach programming, which includes multicultural outreach programming. This money also included a new program, which is $75,000 for free memberships for Black and Brown families in the district. That was to help during the pandemic economic downturn. This also does not include $190,000 in funding that in a normal year, the Regional Parks Foundation provides for camperships. These are for helping low-income youth attend environmental ed camps at Camp Arroyo. And that happens every year and has happened for, I think, a couple of decades now that the camp has been open. So unfortunately, it didn't happen in 2020, but I just wanted to make sure I noted that additional funding that they provide. The pie chart, just to break down there, the $166,000, that goes towards the work that Jamie Rosati does as community outreach coordinator, and the work that Mona Coe does in multicultural outreach. The $471,000, most of that pie goes to the interpretive recreation staff, and that includes funding support for a new position in the mobile education unit, primarily focused on community outreach work. That's a new endeavor for the Regional Parks Foundation. We're very thankful for that. And then the Betsy, roughly $79,000 is for public safety's programs that they do. And in 2020, despite the pandemic, we served just over 28,000 individuals through all of that work. And I think that's a pretty amazing record considering how things went over the course of the last year. With that, I'll pass it back off to Dr. Alvarez.
Thank you so much, Jim. Indeed, beautiful partnerships and beautiful investment, but we still recognize the need to examine seemingly neutral policies and practices to determine whether they are contributing to inequity or in fact eliminating inequity. So the board has asked that we take a closer look where we can refine or fine tune as needed, as in the case on how we collect and report out racial demographical data for program service delivery in general, but not just in our community outreach programs. Also, to create a pathway for inclusive community engagement that is both transparent and meaningful, and certainly to examine the community impact of our mission delivery in communities of color through a community impact assessment for racial equity. These three initiatives are forward-looking in ensuring the Park District is responsive to the evolving expectations of public institutions in this field. In other words, focusing on the power and influence of our organization, our parks, and our programs in contributing and defining quality of life across 33 cities, and continue to work in partnership across sectors, as AGM O'Connor demonstrated, and with the communities that we serve, so that we effectively maximize impact of our mission delivery. Hence, moving us a little bit closer to actualizing our vision of an extraordinary and well-managed system of regional parks that will forever provide the opportunity for a growing and diverse community to experience nature nearby. Next slide. So the Government Affairs team has partnered with Public Affairs and the Planning Department to develop a coordinated and inclusive process to listen, understand, and engage with East Bay communities, including marginalized communities that may be hard to reach and who were non-participants in the 2019 Park and Interest Survey and the 2020 scientific follow-up. The strategy for inclusive community engagement was presented at last week's Board Legislative Committee, and Eric Fuller is joining us here today, and he's available to answer any questions at the end of this presentation that you may have on this initiative. But overall, this is a very good step forward that will inform other Park District initiatives in addressing equity in mission delivery. Next slide. So to have maximum impact in reaching equity for mission delivery, focus and specificity are necessary. One size fits all strategies are rarely successful, but what has been successful is a two-pronged strategy that focuses on both inclusion and racial equity. Today, we highlighted the Park District's body of work in ensuring inclusion of underserved and under-resourced communities, as well as our efforts to reach multiple cultural groups. This is not new to the Park District, but what may be new is responding to what I call the crystallization in public understanding of the reality of systemic racism, and most importantly, the political will to do something about it that came about in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement last summer. The board of directors responded by passing a resolution denouncing racism and hence providing policy direction on achieving equity, followed by authorizing funding as part of the 2021 operating budget to embark on a community impact assessment based on a racial equity framework. We have been exploring best practices that we can lean on in shaping this body of work. And we've seen that best practice shows that including a racial equity lens in the efforts to plan a program, to build a park, or protect open space, provides incredible positive effects and can even reverse historic patterns of disparate outcomes in physical and mental health and other attributes that define the quality of life, such as education. In fact, there's ample evidence that demonstrates that regional parks are particularly poised to effectuate equity in communities, just as the Regional Park District has done in defining the urban limit lines in the East Bay. And that's a tremendous concept to wrap our heads around, because the opportunity to have a collective impact and to where it matters the most is very real. So we are seeing more and more jurisdictions that are making a commitment to achieving racial equity. In fact, there's an increasing strong field of practice in government in general, but also in the park industry, as well as with environmental organizations. We are learning about the tools and resources in place through institutions, primarily stemming from UC Berkeley, which is not a surprise, such as GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and the Othering and Belonging Institute. Also, NRPA, the National Parks and Recreation Association, as well as the City Parks Alliance, both provide a framework to achieve both inclusion and racial equity in the park industry. So since receiving the direction from the board directors, we have been exploring and learning from 5 park agencies who have advanced racial equity in their mission delivery, including Portland, Minneapolis, Seattle Parks and Recreation, and the Chicago's Forest Preserves, and certainly Parks and Recreation across the Bay in San Francisco. We understand that, but we also understand, as we're learning from all these 5 agencies, that before we even begin shaping what can be a new equity policy and practices, we must first examine our existing programs and services to identify and eliminate racial disparities, if any, and understand if there are any discrepancies in resource allocation, so that in turn and over time we can create the intentionality for specific outcomes to maximize impact in mission delivery, which is a beautiful concept. And to do so, we must be grounded on data-driven approach that has measurable results. So this is a very, very large body of work. And we are very excited to have our new general manager, Sabrina Landreth, joining us as we take our very first steps into this journey. She has done a lot of work in this field, and we welcome her leadership and guidance because, simply said, as John Powell says from Othering and Belonging Institute, when organizations and systems fail communities of color, actually we're failing all of us. So with that, we welcome this body of work that we're just barely beginning, and we will do so under the new leadership of our general manager. Next slide. So this concludes staff's presentation. And at this time, we welcome any comments or questions from the board.
Dee, you were muted. President Rosario, you were muted. Pardon me.
Thank you for the presentation. Wonderful. Let's see, questions and comments from the board. Director Coffey.
Sure, it's a wonderful presentation. Very heartwarming, the amount of resources and effort we put into these outreach programs. I'm wondering, because it's obviously not an emphasis for this presentation, but where in the multi-layers we have of people and staffs engaged in community outreach, where do our efforts regarding people with disabilities and that outreach? I know we do quite a bit of, and we spend quite a bit of money on ADA projects. Where does that fall within this scheme?
So, Director Coffey, we remember the presentation I showed you was just a brief look at some of the work that we do. So you saw that we work with the Bay Area Outdoor Recreation Program, the BORP program. That's primarily focused on people with physical disabilities. We also work with like the blind groups in Fremont and the hearing disabled folks. So there's quite a bit of that work. I can send you some more detail on that, but we do quite a bit of that work.
I saw a few of those programs. I'm wondering, just systematically, is there some, is it community affairs, operations, interpretation? Is there systematically responsibility for that focus?
I would say it's more distributed amongst the depends on where the community is based. So it's pretty much all over. I know that in public safety they do some. Jamie Rosati is doing quite a bit of that, and in interpretive recreation we're doing a lot of that work with those groups. So it's pretty well distributed amongst all the divisions that are working in this area.
All right, that's the answer.
And I see Carol has her hand up.
Thank you. And Director Coffey, assisting and funding programs for the disabled is one of our key measured interests for the Regional Parks Foundation. So we actually ask staff specifically to go and find and develop programs and find partners to put together those kind of opportunities for people that might not be able-bodied to enjoy the parks in the same way. So whether it's through operations or public affairs, we are very specific in those asks and annually make sure that we have a nice complement of programs.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Director Wieskamp.
I noticed the symbol for Shepherd's Gate in Livermore, and obviously that is a shelter situation. Do we do those throughout our areas, and how do we find them?
Well, I also have with me our Chief of Interpretive Recreation Services, Ann Kassabaum, who can expand on that. But one of the things that we do through our community outreach coordinator, Jimmy Rosati, is we do what we call community needs assessment in our interpretive sectors. And part of that work is to go out and find these community partners in these areas of need. So that's part of how we find these partnerships. And Jamie's job is really to reach out to them. And then she either works on arranging programs for them, or she passes them off to interpretive recreation staff, who then work with them to set up a program. Part of Jamie's work is to reach out to these community partners and basically introduce them to our parks, our programs, and our services, and introduce them to the ways that they can participate with us and overcome the barriers that they may have to participation, or if it's just a level of knowledge and awareness. So that's a big part of her job, is to contact community partners and make them aware of what we provide. Right. And Andy, you want to add into that?
This is Ann Kassabaum, Chief of Interpretive and Recreation Services, and Jim is exactly right. We wanted to give you just a taste of partnerships that we have, but those community needs assessments that we've done really help us drive on agencies that are in each of those sectors, and who we are serving and who we are not. So that helps us with developed programs.
Great. Congratulations. And I think, I know the VA hospital out here has certainly benefited from programs that get them out of the place and down to Del Val and so on. I just think whatever we can do with these sort of, especially these days, super closeted people, maybe this year we'll be able to let them out and explore a little more. So thanks a lot.
Director Lane.
Thank you for this. It was very interesting indeed. And I'm just so proud of what Mona Coe has done over these past years. It's been extraordinary. What a leader in this area. And I want to compliment you on beginning with talking about listening, because we need to hear what people want, what our partners want and need. And then we'll be able to have a go forward together. I just think that informed listening can make all the difference. And then I want to put in a word for integrating seniors into these programs a little bit more. When you talk about people who are economically disadvantaged, isolated, there are seniors in every community, and I'm sure in the ones that you're focusing on that could benefit by having us listen to them and get them involved in park programs or into the parks. And the other thing that I really am aware of is how many grandmothers are raising their grandchildren. And this is another way, in particular, Black women have a strength that is just extraordinary. And I know that groups like Elder Hostel, they have a different name, do things with grandparents and grandchildren together. And I would just like to ask that we are open to doing some things like that. These seniors need some assistance, and they'll bend our ear if we put our ear out there. So thank you for that, and thanks for the presentation. You just touched on things I know that you do. I love to have the mobile visitor center go to more senior centers too. So thank you.
Great. Director Corbett.
Oh, I think Director Eccles had her hand up.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I'll go after her. I'll go after her.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. It's always wonderful to hear about the work that is underway, and so thank you for all of that. And I'm particularly excited about where we're headed, and I really appreciate the remarks of DGM Dr. Alvarez about really creating this intentionality to achieve equitable access, because really at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? I mean, it's not just sort of equal opportunity, but it's like, okay, who's actually coming, who's actually accessing our parks, and who are those folks who aren't coming to our parks, and why not, and what are the barriers? And so I'm very excited about the work that Eric Feeler and Lisa Boldinger are doing in terms of identifying those folks who aren't currently using our parks and reaching out and engaging all of those folks in conversation about, why not, and how can we better meet their needs, what barriers might be standing in the way. And so very much appreciate all of that work, and really look forward to being part of it.
Director Corbett, and then Director Waspy.
Thank you. I very much appreciate this presentation on so many levels. One, I think there's little echoes in my head of last time we had a workshop like this a year ago, when we were talking about equity in the delivery of our services and making sure that we take the vast resources of the Park District and make sure they're shared in so many communities, especially in communities where there might be greater need to create, bridges for access. So appreciate hearing how we have continued to work towards that, and how we're going to continue to develop are taking a look at all of our programs, our resources, our assets, and how we make sure that they are equitably shared across our vast district. So thank you for that. Also very much appreciate the work that's being done. Clearly, a lot of work was done in order to put this presentation together, to gather data from other sources and then extrapolate it into our district, so we can start getting a sense of whether we're reaching some of our equity goals and interests. So I appreciate that very much, but also very much looking forward to us collecting our own data so that we have even more specific data moving forward, and that will help influence how we do our work and meet these goals that we're talking about. So appreciate that very much. And it is wonderful, some of the partners that we have. I'm hoping as we develop this data, we have the opportunity to develop programs and actual regions and areas, which we have done in many cases, for example, the Richmond Rangers, but to see if we can do even more of that in some of our economically challenged neighborhoods and areas. I think that's just so important. So thank you for moving in that direction. And so my question is, and I know this was a question actually that came up the other day at a committee of the foundation as well. Where are we with regard to starting to collect data moving forward? So we have this really important data that allows us not only to provide our, meet our goals of equity and services and resources, but also, is really, really important when we're developing grant proposals and such. So where are we with regard to collecting data into the future that's more specific to what we're doing? And I know we're pulling in other people's data, like from state schools and California data on schools and such, and federal lunch programs. But where are we going with that?
So Director Corbett, that's an excellent question. And we are examining the best way to integrate the data collection into the park system, into the park district's registration system of registration for programs. And there's many different ways in which we can collect the data. We just need to find the way that can quickly be implemented here and that can get us the data that we need. So I know that Jim O'Connor and his team, they're looking into that. It's a common practice in the park industry, parks and recreation industry. We just need to find what is the best way for us so that we can have the numbers that we can use and inform the other initiatives that we're launching.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're working on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Director Waspy. Oh, you're muted.
Uh-oh.
Call in.
When are we going to meet in person? I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you to the Jim O'Connor's staff and especially the community outreach staff for the great job you're doing. I look forward to great things happening. And, we started talking about some specifics, and I keep thinking of Director Rosario, who has long advocated for, and we've talked about veterans and people like that. And what a simple way, and I've agreed with him a number of times, of what a simple way to outreach to veterans or disabled veterans, or however you would define it. And there's a precedent been set. State parks, let's invite those folks too for free. Come to the parks for free. Give them an annual pass, just like other underserved folks do. And I think that would be a great way to get. And I don't think, well, I won't stereotype, but I mean, veterans by definition are a little older. They probably have different forms of recreation, and it might not need interpretive staff to do that or people to supervise them, so to speak. I think it'd be a great opportunity. I would love to emphasize swimming and some real important things. The thing that the park district can do, I mean, we can't feed everybody that's underserved. We can't house underserved, but boy, do we have the ability with especially in perfectly located Roberts Park, Roberts Pool. That was one of my emphasis. I hope we can get that done. That's going to serve a community and give them a skill that is, I mean, without being too dramatic, could save their lives. We also have Temescal where we teach swimming. We've got an incredible staff, aquatic staff. And even at the beaches, I think we could go to most of, if you look at the demographic profile that Jim showed, the little dots, a lot of the underserved communities are along our shoreline parks, or closest to our shoreline parks. So, geez, the opportunity to teach how not to drown in those type of areas. Just great opportunities, I think, and I look forward to working some real constructive ways that way.
Thank you, Director Wasby. If I may, I was having a very heartfelt discussion about all these topics with District Council, Carol Victor. And to your point, children in communities of color are 3 to 4 times likely to die from drowning than other children. And in the Park District, in the last 14 years, all the drownings and the loss of life have been boys of brown and from brown and Black communities. And that's how important this body of work is.
Yes, excellent. I think I got a response from everybody. Thank you. I too, a wonderful presentation. I'm really happy to see that we are on the way to collecting data. We all knew what we're doing the programs. We've been outreaching, but we just didn't have a really good way of saying how many and where. And I'm really glad to see that we're on our way in collecting that. But one other thing that's been brought up, and I've been harping on lately too, is that when we use terms like underserved and economically challenged, it's important that we state somewhere what that definition means. You know, so that defines for the public who we're reaching out to. And so I think that's very important, as well as collecting the data. So I'm very, very happy and proud actually of our organization. And to Dr. Alvarez's presentation, she pointed out that there are many agencies that are in our same shoes. And I just attended the CPRS conference this week, and it is very, very true. There are many agencies that have not even started yet in there, but there is one other agency that started in 3 years ago, that they made a presentation that was very, very good, and that's the Cosumnes Special District in Elk Grove, and that's another resource there. They had a very, very good presentation, and it looked like we're following their same path. And so I'm very proud of this park district and the direction we're going. I'm proud of what we've provided. And I think the board of directors agree wholeheartedly. So I'm hoping to see that we continue to go forward. Thank you very much. And then let's see. Any other question? We're gonna, I believe, we're gonna skip the next item, and we're gonna put that on to the next workshop. And then, so that leaves us room for public comments at this time. So I'd like to go back to Madam Clerk, Yolanda.
Is there sound that everybody is hearing here?
Yeah, I was just gonna
comment. Or am I just hearing this?
Yeah, no, you're hearing it. I'm gonna
Okay.
comment on that.
We're all hearing it, so we're all in the boat together.
I believe it was, it's still there. So if everyone could put themselves on mute for just a second, that would be great. So maybe we can isolate it when you come back on one at a time. Okay, much better. So we actually have 3 public comments. We have 2 members of the public on the line, but I'm going to go in this order. I'm going to read the comment that we received via email first. And then I'm going to read then I'm going to ask that Patricia Brooks come on and then follow that up with Kelly Abreu, keeping in mind that everyone has 3 minutes. So I'm going to read this one first. And it's from Maddie Nematollahi, Nematollahi. Apologize if I messed up your name. And he says, hello, I live on Summit Road in Berkeley, next to Tilden Park. While at a trail run this week, I stopped to chat with a maintenance crew who told me South Park Drive is scheduled to open on April the 1st. If this is true, I want to express my strong objection to reopening the road. With the perpetually high risk of wildfire, and with the unsafe and unregulated human presence along Grizzly Peak Boulevard, particularly at night, allowing any motor vehicle access into Tilden directly from Grizzly Peak Boulevard after dark would be an absolutely unnecessary and unacceptable invitation to disaster. The Park District does not have the means to patrol and protect this area at night. Therefore, South Park Drive should remain closed at night or completely closed if the park does not have the staffing to open and close the gates on a daily basis. I would like the board to consider opening the road for day use only on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. I think this would be the ideal balance for satisfying the interest of public access while keeping the parklands and infrastructure safer at night, and also minimizing the burden on staff of opening and closing gates. Please do not underestimate the danger posed by activity on Grizzly Peak Boulevard. Please do keep that danger out of Tilden Park to the extent you are reasonably able. Thank you for consideration of this issue. And then I'm going to ask Ms. Brooks to unmute herself. And if you want to turn your video on, you can.
You have to let me.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I didn't know it was blocked.
That's okay. That's okay. Hi.
Okay. I'm looking.
Wow. Can you hear me, Okay, great. It's been a long day, and so thank you. I've been here for the whole entire meeting. So first, thank you to Director President Rosario. My name is Patricia Brooks, and I'm a native to Oakland, and I grew up in the East Bay Regional Parks. And I am very interested in the representation and the equity and mission. I have been working with Director Rosario for about 6 months and trying to really understand what the mission is and what the direction is. And I think Director Echols, we reached out to you as well. I want to make it clear that when we're speaking about underrepresented, and I heard Dr. Alvarez's response to this, I think that's fantastic, the direction. But I think we really need to understand what underrepresented means, because that was something that I actually pointed out, that we don't have a baseline understanding for that. And absent a baseline understanding as to what underrepresented is, it's hard to get at what we're trying to actually do as it relates to our mission. So I'm so thankful that Dr. Alvarez's presentation looks to do the deep dive work we need to do, especially after George Floyd, in light with Black Lives Matter. And I am here in my representation of BWOPA, Black Women Organized for Political Action. I also want to note briefly that it's great that we spoke a lot about outreaching to communities, but we not only need to outreach to communities for them to come to the park, but the communities that we outreach to, we also need to have staff that represents the outreach that we're trying to achieve. When we look at our 2020 numbers, we have 46 African Americans working for the East Bay Regional Park District, compared to 512 white Caucasian individuals. So when you're speaking about diversity and inclusion, that really starts from within. So I also had a discussion with the fantastic staff, and I want to mention that Miss Victor, Lisa, Catherine, everyone that has worked with me on this issue for the last 6 months has been absolutely fantastic and stellar. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our new general manager. I worked with you when I worked with Councilmember Desley Brooks at the City of Oakland. I'm so happy to see you here, Director Landreth. And that being said, I'll yield my comments. Thank you very much. Hey, Sabrina.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooks. Kelly Abreu.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this district should strive for best practices, not just to meet the minimum legal requirements. First off, park rangers are the best representatives for the district. Rangers should get out, engage with the public again when this pandemic is over, tear down the pandemic barriers, and get rangers out of their shells. Second, This board needs to vote on policies, not make decisions informally under the counter. Board wrote critical comments. The district wrote critical comments on environmental assessment for Livermore Solar project. The Sierra Club came out in support of that project after careful deliberation. Tri-Valley Conservancy is going to monitor environmental compliance there. This board should vote on the solar issue to approve comments, any comments that are issued beforehand on such a controversial issue. Directors should be funding this district first, not prioritizing funding for other districts. While the solar is in the political spotlight in Livermore, Newark gets ignored. There are 500 units of housing proposed to be built in the Newark wetlands. Environmental organizations are united in opposition to that project, but this district is neglecting Newark. Newark wetlands are on the back of the bus. Third, we have a coalition for the fair redistricting in Alameda County, and that includes Boapa, the lady who just spoke to you. Redistricting ought to be equitable, inclusive, and transparent. Ward boundaries should prioritize communities, not prioritize visitor centers, visitor counts, or the home residence of incumbents, and not the political factions and the political interests of incumbents. The census data is going to be delayed, so the window for community outreach is short. Best practices would include several remote community meetings, not just one board meeting in Oakland, where you expect people to all show up in Oakland and talk about their concerns. You should go out to meet with, to hold those meetings and gather input remotely. Ask community groups to participate in the redistricting. Your staff should, at the very least. Ask community groups to participate and help gather that input. Look at the interpretive sectors as a model for the district boundaries. Those interpretive sectors are a lot cleaner than your district, than your ward boundaries right now. Look at that interpretive sector map that we just looked at. And we need a data-driven approach to draw these boundaries, reevaluate seemingly neutral boundaries with intentionality for measurable results. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And President Rosario, if I may, I just received a chat from Jim Hansen. He would like to comment publicly. Mr. Hansen, if you can unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you very much.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, board and staff. This was, a really information-packed meeting. And I just want to comment on the earlier presentation about the trees and follow up on Chairperson Rosario's comments about habitat restoration being an integral part of wildfire prevention. You know, fortunately, we have a foundation in the district's wildfire plan that includes restoration of oak woodland and native grasslands after the removal of high hazard fuel stands. And that, you know, second, there's a foundation of fire and stewardship already working together. And in fact, the chief and stewardship staff have made time to meet in the field to discuss simple and effective ways to protect you know, rare plant communities, but also some of our intact native vegetation that we just all appreciate. So it is very doable. And, you know, third, of course, Board Member Rosario and Board Member Corbett worked with several environmental organizations to add stewardship as part of Measure FF fuel reduction work. So this is just to say, we're very appreciative that some important foundational work has gone on. The CAL FIRE programmatic EIR also includes restoration as a part of that. And I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and the mention of this part of this huge undertaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Let me do a quick scan, Director Rosario, to make sure I have not missed anyone. And oh no, I think we're good.
Thank you for the comments, everyone. They're noted, and I appreciate you everyone for sitting through our program. But we need to go back and see the results of our poll. for the direction for the Park District.
Yes, thank you, President Rosario. Yes, it's been a very good day. I think lots of information sharing. The staff really appreciates hearing from all the board members during the day. But we did tally the results of our priority setting. And let's see, I have it here on the screen. Is everyone able to see that? And as we've already talked about before, this is just one exercise to hear board interests. It helps us to develop our work plans, set our performance goals for the 2022 year, and also just confirm what we're currently working on. So I just highlighted a few that had many items, many board members selecting those in their top 5 of the 17 that were listed. So climate change impacts on facilities and shorelines had several board members' votes, equity and mission delivery, and continuing our DEI efforts with everything that we just talked about, funding for the Park District, and then shoreline center improvements at MLK. Those were the ones that got the most votes. As always, we know these are all important, and that that each board member selected these, you know, because it's important to them. So any questions or comments?
Dr. Eccles.
Results out. You know, typically all the AGMs have this pinned on their wall, and we just use it to kind of guide our work plans. So thank you for going through that fun, but also, you know, not perfect exercise with us. Appreciate that.
It's part of Zooming.
We did it.
Dr. Eccles, you had a question?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much. I thought you did a wonderful job pulling all of this together. CFO Ocker. So, what I was going to say, I'm kind of kidding, but I thought I read in your memo that there was, we were trying to narrow it down to 20. So since we only have 17, does that mean we get to do all of them?
Well,
I'll make that motion.
As Deputy General Manager Alvarez will share with you when she does the review of our performance goals and all of our accomplishments, and it's noted in the budget every year, you can see that, you know, we do accomplish a lot here at the district, more than we can even imagine to strive for. So we will continue to do that.
Thank you very much.
Add anything to that?
Well, yes, thank you, Deborah. I think that there's a lot of thought that goes into making sure that we deliver on behalf of the board and the public and the voters. You should note, as Sabrina has already noted, we have a very hardworking group of staff who actually, they very much want to please you. I have very difficult conversations regarding, we went through this whole prioritization process and you guys are delivering on 75 things. And so, but you know, these are things that are very important to all of us, and we try to fit them as much as possible. But we do have to make space for capacity. I'm very concerned of some of the things that we discussed today, pertaining some of big challenges in front of the Park District. And then I'm also, which I am so appreciative of Sabrina coming in and saying, you guys just worked through a pandemic. You must be tired. And yeah, these are the same people delivering essential services and parks to the public, and delivering at the same time all that you saw today and that we will continue to deliver. So we have a very committed staff and team, and we want to partner with you. But I think that as we continue to deliver on the work, that we have to have conversations regarding capacity, focus, and trade-offs. And I think that we also need to make space for Sabrina. She may want to have some ideas on how to move some of the priorities and the reasons why, right? That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Director Lane.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that, Anna, because we can only ask staff to do so much. And we have huge projects that they are all working on. And I think several people on the board said this at the start of the workshop, acknowledging that. And so I think for many of us on the board, what we appreciate is having you hear, these things that are important to us. And I know when things can't get done because of capacity, I think we can be really very understanding about that. If somebody will just give us a call and say, we just were not able to get to that right now. Because sometimes we feel like we've sent things out in the air and they're just floating around like a little COVID germ. And so you need to be sure and give us that call and say, we're just not able to get to it right now. And understand that we will understand.
Well said. Well said. Anyone else? I just wanted to say that we have a big plate and we filled it. And I think we're overflowing. And
Yes, we did.
Speaking to the capacity issues, I mean, a lot of the members of the board want us to put a measure on the ballot at some time, and that's one of the things I mentioned in the beginning, was that it all depends on whether staff is ready, and that depends on the assessment of the general manager and your executive team, and so yes, 2022 is a possibility, but if we don't have the capacity, then 24 is definitely not out of reach. So, and it just gives us more time to prepare. So, I just don't want you to feel like, oh yeah, we got to do it. I mean, I think it's a good exercise to get up to try to do 2022. But if it's not possible, just let us know. I mean, in actuality, the longer runway we have to tax measure, the better, the more prepared we will be. And we all do appreciate the amount of work that this group, our employees from the ground up, accomplish every year. And we are appreciative and we don't want to burn you out. So thank you. This was a great workshop. And I'll give some time for our new general manager to say a few words as well.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, President Rosario. I think all of what you all have said is spot on. One of the biggest and hardest parts of any general manager or public administrator's job is managing expectations, right? And expectations on our staff capacity, our fiscal capacity, our political capacity, all of those things that I think actually were covered today, believe it or not, in terms of kind of all of these trade-offs that we have to make, and that I can assure you, Director Lane, we will be good about being upfront with you, and if there are things that are falling off, or and just being honest about why, so they're not just sitting out there in the ether. I've just been absolutely amazed by the volume of work that goes on here, and the just with the same people that have their hands in everything. It's just remarkable how much that everyone is able to get done. But we do have to pace ourselves. And there's this, I think I may have shared this with the board, and I haven't shared it with the executive team yet, but the difference between pressure and stress. And there are parts of this organization already that I can see are stressed. Pressure is really good. Pressure is great. I love the public puts pressure on us. The board can put pressure on us, and that allows us to do amazing things. But when you're stressed, that's when things actually start to fall apart and you don't have good decision making and the outcome isn't going to serve anybody. So really, I think as we all work together here and I kind of start to get my head around all of these incredible pieces that are all moving at the same time, that we all, I think, are going to be aligned in terms of trying to find a way so the staff is less stressed while we keep kind of the healthy pressure so that we can deliver for everybody in these two counties. So thank you. I thought this was wonderful. Great job to Deborah and to Anna and the whole team. I thought that this was really well done. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. And Director Rosario, you're on mute. I think there's only one thing we were going to finish at the end of the agenda was to just remind everybody that this was only board workshop number 2. We have another one scheduled for April 23rd. And I think we can notice that for maybe 12:30 again. We have a little time to confirm that, but for now, it would hold 12:30 on Friday, April 23rd. And at that board workshop, we're going to talk a little bit more about the pressure, the good, healthy pressure of the public commitments that we've all made based on our capital programs. So the public commitments that we've made through our measures and through the grants that we've applied for and accepted, and talk about capital finance and maintenance. So we look forward to that. Thank you, everyone.
Great. With that, I would like to, before we adjourn, I'd like to just acknowledge in remembrance the recent deaths in Atlanta and Colorado. And yes, let's continue to be kind to each other and look out for each other. So thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.
Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
On.